It is end of August, beginning September 2023. This ebook is being narrated by Kacee Leigh Connolly of Astrologically Sound. This ebook is being narrated as a gift to Tina Rahimi, the author, and was started as a project for my own pleasure as I purchased it on Amazon. I'm a student of Dr. Tina Rahimi, and I wanted to do this project as a gift because she likes my voice, and I thought having her first book in my read aloud in my own voice might be a sweet gift for her. So I spent the last week making 103 audio files of this ebook for her and editing it, and I'm about to compile it into an MP4 video format. So I'm not making any money off of this. It is not a professional audio book, and please forgive my mispronunciations of most of the especially French authors that she quoted, and a lot of the poets and such that she quoted, because I didn't take the time to Google them and have them recite them out. I was just trying to get it done, basically, and I'm not a polyglot like Miss Rahimi is. So I hope you guys, if this ends up being on YouTube, I hope you enjoy it. But if it's just for you, Tina, I love and squish you to bits, and this is from the bottom of my heart, and I absolutely love your first book, and I'm so proud of you, and I know this is the beginning of very big things. So there you go. This ebook is by Tina Rahimi, titled Jupiter in Psychological and Evolutionary Astrology, Signs, Houses, Aspects. Inside the cover it says, again, Jupiter in Psychological and Evolutionary Astrology, Signs, Houses, Aspects by Tina Rahimi. Copyright 2023 by Tina Rahimi. Cover design by Stefano Soranzo. Dedication says, to my Jupiter, Dai Darush, Dai Dar. I'm so sorry for mispronouncing his beautiful name. Dai Darayurush, who celebrated my first breath, and to you, my dear reader, for your hospitality. Acknowledgements. This book manifested after many hours of interaction with hundreds of clients and students who trusted me with their birth charts. I have learned from various teachers, astrologers, and philosophers who have shared their priceless knowledge through classes or books. I have been loved and supported by many wonderful souls, including the readers of my blog posts and those who give me feedback through social media or email. I thank them all. And then there's a table of contents, and then I will begin. Meaning and multiplicity, Jupiter in the birth chart. Jupiter as expansion and multiplication. It is a relatively well-known fact among astrology enthusiasts that Jupiter expands and multiplies everything it touches. This can be true of Jupiter's aspects to other natal planets or while transiting the natal chart. In many cases, Jupiter acts like yeast. It adds to, expands, or inflates the function or significance of the planets with which it is in dialogue. In a positive sense, Jupiter is associated with abundance and fertility. In ancient astrology, material wealth, happiness, and virility were evaluated by observing the condition of Jupiter in the natal chart. However, the core Jupiterian principles of expansion and multiplication can occasionally point to negative scenarios in a medical context. Obesity, expansion of the body, swelling or enlarged organs can correspond to a challenged Jupiter, either in the natal chart or in the transit chart. In the psychological context, Jupiter may signal excess and mania if not handled with care. Therefore, this archetype can manifest in our lives either positively or negatively. It all depends on how much consciousness we put into working with this planet beyond simply considering it the greater benefic. Jupiter has capacity for faith. Just as our cognitive ability is symbolized by Mercury in the birth chart, the opposite function, faith, is symbolized by Jupiter. Therefore, when we believe in something without empirical evidence, we are operating from our Jupiterian core. Faith, Sagittarius, is our ability to go beyond knowledge gained through dissection and analysis, Virgo, or information gathered through categorization and labeling, Gemini. Jupiter symbolizes this ability to look at the horizon, much like Christopher Columbus, and see something beyond our immediate field of vision. Faith can provide hope and optimism. Where our mental limitations and calculated logic cannot save us, God's grace can. Since Jupiter was the ancient ruler of the Neptunian realm of Pisces, it also symbolizes our ability to let go and let God. However, Jupiter and Neptune differ in their style of surrender. Jupiter encourages surrender to God's wisdom, while Neptune encourages surrender to God's love. When we stop thinking or looking for evidence and accept something on a leap of faith, we invoke Jupiter. On the other hand, when we understand that we cannot know anything and that the highest form of wisdom we can ever hope to attain is love, we are blessed by the Neptunian principle. Negatively, Jupiter can symbolize dogmatism, the illusion that one's belief system is the best and that one has a divine mission to spread it around the world or impose it on others. As history has taught us, faith can easily be taken to extremes. A challenged and unintegrated Jupiter in the natal chart can indeed symbolize ideological intolerance or religious extremism. Jupiter has capacity for humor. As a mythological figure, Jupiter loved adventure, but also fun and games. Note the natural trine aspect between Sagittarius and Leo. Jupiter's placement in the birth chart can thus reveal the kind of humor we enjoy or produce. For example, Jupiter in air signs tends to enjoy verbal humor, puns, or wordplay. In contrast, an earthy Jupiter may find pantomime or physical comedy more enjoyable. Charlie Chaplin, for example, had his natal Jupiter in the earth sign of Capricorn, and he indeed perfected the art of humorous expression by relying entirely on his body and not using words. Also, people with Jupiter in their earth sign seem to have a greater chance of turning their humorous flair into a career, giving it a practical and tangible expression. Jupiter as need for meaning. Religion and philosophy have been understood as Jupiterian themes. After the death and rebirth phase of Scorpio in the 8th house comes the need to make sense of what we have been through, and this is represented by Sagittarius in the 9th house. Religion is one way to make sense of our human experience, and philosophy is another. As the Austrian psychiatrist and existential psychotherapist Viktor E. Frankl once said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." At times, the only way to deal with a traumatic event is to give meaning to it. A well-integrated Jupiter in the natal chart can symbolize our inner tendency to discover this meaning and go beyond the trauma. On the other hand, an uncomfortable natal Jupiter can make us reluctant to search for meaning. In this case, we may become too cynical or rigid in our interpretation of traumatic events in our lives. We may unconsciously deprive ourselves of the relief that alternative interpretations can give us, and so we may remain stuck in the Scorpio phase, encountering the trauma, without ever moving into the Sagittarius phase, finding meaning in the trauma. Jupiter has capacity to understand the foreign. Since Jupiter has to do with going beyond ourselves and opening up to unexplored horizons, it can also indicate our tolerance, or lack thereof, for what is generally considered foreign or unknown. A well-integrated Jupiter makes us comfortable with what exists outside our cognitive or ideological horizons. This includes foreign languages or cultures, foreign religions or ways of life, foreign foods or traditions, and generally anything that is unfamiliar to us. In contrast, an unintegrated Jupiter can signal that we are uncomfortable with challenging our way of being and trying new things. We may develop xenophobia or a lack of tolerance for other belief systems, ideologies, or lifestyles. The ability to see the bigger picture is also related to Jupiter's symbolism in this sense, as it represents our ability to put things into perspective and not to get caught up in an immediate narrow point of view. Taken to extremes, however, this can lead to undesirable results such as seeing the forest but not the trees. In other words, with an uncomfortable Jupiter in the birth chart, we may lose sight of the important practical details that need to be taken care of. We may focus only on a general perspective or theoretical frame of reference. Jupiter has tendency to go beyond. Since Jupiter symbolizes expansion and a tendency toward the big picture, it can also symbolize overreaching of any kind. If Jupiter remains unintegrated, it can indicate a tendency to bite off more than one can chew. This basic indication can be further modified by Jupiter's contacts with other planets in the natal chart. In aspect to Saturn, for example, episodes of overdoing may be followed by episodes of underdoing, indicating an uneasy rhythm in the individual's life. Interestingly, since Jupiter represents moving beyond the boundaries of time and space, it can also represent the process of physical death, moving beyond the boundaries of the body and merging into the broader cosmos. In this sense, Jupiter transiting a sensitive point in the chart can sometimes, not always, symbolize the shedding of physical existence and the release of one's soul into boundless time and space. Alternatively, it can symbolize the development of faith in one's destiny, which means finding meaning in whatever transpires regarding the point or planet Jupiter touches in the chart. Jupiter in fire signs. Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries symbolizes confidence in our ability to initiate new trends or take a course of action to the extreme. As the archetype of the pioneer, Aries represents our courage to jump in and just do it. Therefore, Jupiter in Aries may signal that our psyche is relatively familiar with the idea of jump-starting new things or taking an unprecedented course of action that has not been approved or imagined before, for better or worse. An excellent example is the Spanish painter and sculptor Salvador Dalí. His paintings display his fearlessness in depicting the raw aspects of the unconscious mind. There is also a refreshing, childlike openness to experimentation with new concepts in his work, which is another quality associated with fire signs, sheer enthusiasm for creating and doing things rather than a concern about the outcome of the action or the approval of the audience. Jupiter in Aries may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by living out our primal urges in an unabashed, uncensored manner. The very fact that we are alive gives meaning to our existence. Therefore, there is usually no compelling urge to dig deep and find sophisticated reasons for life. We may also feel an inner attraction toward whatever is wild and unrestrained, as the meaning of life, Jupiter, is very much flavored by the Aryan urge to be as natural as wild weeds. As Gerard Manley Hopkins, who had this placement in his natal chart, eloquently remarked, "What would the world be, once bereft of wet and of wildness? Let them be left, oh let them be left, wildness and wet. Let live the weeds and the wilderness yet." Jupiter in Leo. Jupiter in Leo symbolizes confidence in one's ability to create or procreate. As the archetype of creativity, Leo represents that part of us that endlessly wants to shine, entertain, and play in the hope of gaining attention or admiration. Therefore, Jupiter in Leo may signal that our psyche is prone to self-aggrandizing. A tendency to show off our special abilities may also exist, especially if we are not working in a creative field, not channeling this energy into a constructive professional outlet. In its positive form, Jupiter in Leo symbolizes general optimism about the intentionality of life. It symbolizes the fact that things are moving toward a purpose, and that is the sheer glory of existence. There may also exist a passionate preoccupation with the self and various manifestations of it, symbolized by the sun, the ruler of Leo. An excellent example of this outlook is reflected in the works of the French philosopher and writer Maurice Blanchot, who, apropos his natal Jupiter in Leo, said, "I wanted to see something in full daylight. I had the same desire for the daylight as for water and air. And if seeing was fire, I required the plenitude of fire. And if seeing would infect me with madness, I madly wanted that madness." In its negative form, however, Jupiter in Leo may symbolize a philosophical obsession with the self to the point of finding no meaning in life outside of the boundaries of the self. It is important in this case to be aware of this ideological bias and consciously work toward balancing our worldview by considering that which does not simply yield to such a self-referential perception we may have formed of existence and our place in it. Jupiter in Sagittarius. Jupiter in Sagittarius symbolizes confidence in our ability to understand the foreign or expand beyond the borders of the known world. The energy of Sagittarius, as the sign ruled by Jupiter, is in complete harmony with all that Jupiter represents in astrology, including expansion, the search for meaning, and general optimism. Jupiter in Sagittarius signals that our psyche is open to the unknown. It naturally moves toward an expansion of our perceptual horizons and tends to question the meaning or significance of things. An investigation of different lifestyles, cultures, or religions may be interesting to individuals with this placement in their natal charts, as the expansive energy of Jupiter in Sagittarius encourages us to examine all that is not initially known or immediately placed within our comfort zone. Jupiter in Sagittarius signifies that our psyche has a natural philosophical bent. Either we find a way to understand existence and our place in it, or we suffer from a lack of sufficient evidence in favor for a version of truth that satisfies us. In either case, meaning will be an issue with this placement, and an effort to deal with it will color part of our mundane experience. Not surprisingly, many individuals with this placement have become writers or poets. They have explored various ways of attaining wisdom or understanding the meaning of life. Hermann Hesse, the universally celebrated author of Siddhartha, is an apt example. Knowledge can be communicated, but not wisdom. One can find it, live it, be fortified by it, do wonders through it, but one cannot communicate and teach it. Jupiter in Earth signs. Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter in Taurus symbolizes perseverance in our ability to secure the material aspects of our lives. As one of the most tenacious energies in the archetypal zodiac, Taurus represents our need for consistency. Therefore, Jupiter in Taurus signals that our psyche tends to gravitate toward familiar experiences or unchanging contexts rather than shake the status quo or initiate something completely brand new. This, however, does not mean that people with this placement cannot be innovative or inventive. It rather refers to the type of innovation or inventiveness these individuals may find appealing. An artist with Jupiter in Taurus, for instance, probably enjoys creating something original based on existing artistic styles, or rearranging and refining the pre-existent tangible forms in mundane life. The most impressive example would be Andy Warhol, whose artwork explicitly displays a passion for mundane objects. He once stated, "Isn't life a series of images that change as they repeat themselves?" Jupiter in Taurus may also symbolize a general psychological tendency toward appreciating the yin values such as patience, persistence, and receptivity, rather than the yang values such as initiation, motion, and action. Individuals with this placement are encouraged to cultivate opportunities for silence, solitude, and contemplation in their everyday life. This will help Jupiter's expansive energy flow naturally and fruitfully. Jupiter in Taurus may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by appreciating the simple, concrete aspects of life. These aspects are right in front of us. Also, a desire to establish and maintain material and physical comfort may guide many of our everyday activities. Apropos the Venusian side of Taurus, we may, indeed, base our life philosophy on mundane beauty and simple sensual pleasures rather than abstract principles or complicated codes of ethics. An inner attraction may also exist toward all that is pretty and present. As the meaning of life, Jupiter is very much flavored by the Taurian aversion toward moving away from what is sensually verifiable or concretely accessible. A remarkable literary example that clarifies how Jupiter in Taurus functions is the novel Ulysses, written by the universally celebrated Irish writer James Joyce. In more than 700 pages, Joyce poetically, and at times insipidly, chronicles the random thoughts and mundane encounters of an ordinary character during the course of one day. In contrast to its title, which promises extraordinary characterization and heroic events, Ulysses is nothing but a glimpse into the beauty and banality of mundane life. The novel is not exciting to read and probably quite difficult to finish, as it is loaded with endless allusions and references. Yet isn't this precisely how life is? In its seemingly repetitive structure, every day contains hundreds of unique moments and profound mysteries, mostly overlooked and forgotten. Folded away in the memory of nature with her toys, memories beset his brooding brain. Her glass of water from the kitchen tap when she had approached the sacrament, a cored apple filled with brown sugar roasting for her at the hob on a dark autumn evening. If Jupiter functions in an extreme manner in Taurus, however, we may stay on the surface of things, focusing all of our energy towards securing a materially comfortable life, overlooking the possibility of multiple or deeper dimensions of meaning. Jupiter in Virgo. Jupiter in Virgo symbolizes perseverance in sorting through the mess of existence and developing a judicious approach to our underlying beliefs. In other words, Jupiter in Virgo may signal that our psyche operates from a highly critical standpoint, always striving for improvement in ourselves or others. Positively, we may experience this energy as an imperative to better ourselves and our environment, take care of plants and animals, or learn more about these topics. In its negative form, however, this placement may denote a fanatical attachment to logic and deductive thinking, an obsessive belief in precision, and an ideological intolerance of chaos in any form. Also, Jupiter in Virgo may symbolize a practical tendency toward minimalism, i.e., getting rid of all that is not absolutely necessary. The artistic or literary expression usually reflects this penchant as well. Guy de Maupassant, the French novelist who had this placement in his natal chart, succinctly stated, "There is an unexplored side to everything. What we wish to say, there is but one word to express it, but one verb to give it movement, but one adjective to qualify it." In its extreme form, Jupiter in Virgo may get caught up in the minutiae and lose sight of the broader context in which all details are placed. Errors of judgment may thus occur easily, as what is right in one context may prove wrong in another. Jupiter in Virgo may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by paying attention to details. This is done by approaching life experiences with a discerning eye. In other words, every component has a function within the system, so the best way of understanding the system is to understand the function of each component. This will probably summarize the basic life philosophy of an individual with Jupiter in Virgo. The mechanics behind any operating system and the coding that allows the system to function properly may also be of interest to a person with this placement. For example, the American poet Ezra Pound, who had this placement in his birth chart, considered poetry, which seems to defy systematic understanding, to be a technical art. Poetry is a sort of inspired mathematics, which gives us equations not for abstract figures, triangles, squares, and the like, but for the human emotions. If one has a mind which inclines to magic rather than science, one will prefer to speak of these equations as spells or incantations. It sounds more arcane, mysterious, recondite. An inclination toward dismissing what cannot be logically proven may also exist. Therefore, abstract systems of thought and belief that rely on pure theory may not appeal to an individual with this placement in the natal chart. In contrast, life philosophies that bring the physical and spiritual together, such as yoga, may be quite fascinating, and the individual may even choose to study and practice such doctrines. Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter in Capricorn symbolizes the ability to strategize and focus on what is important rather than wasting energy sorting out the trivial. Jupiter placed in a sign ruled by Saturn may also signal that our psyche is prone to self-monitoring regarding expansion in general. In other words, growth in our lives tends to take place in a premeditated rather than spontaneous manner. Individuals with this placement will benefit from consciously planning their moves and risks in life rather than leaving things to chance or fate. As Jupiter's expansive energy is brought to consciousness, Saturn, Jupiter in Capricorn may also symbolize a persistent tendency to gain consciousness regarding our true motives or the nature of our morality or codes of behavior. As the English poet and satirist Alexander Pope, who had this placement in his natal chart, remarked, "Trust not yourself, but your defects to know. Make use of every friend and every foe." Jupiter in Capricorn may also symbolize perfectionism regarding our adherence to ethical principles as defined by us. With this placement, we can be quite aware of our true motives. We may also have a harder time forgiving ourselves after committing an error of judgment or exhibiting any unplanned reaction to someone else's unsettling words or unjust behavior. The inner critical voice usually targets us rather than the guilty party. Positively, as we tend to hold ourselves to higher standards, we may be quite scrupulous regarding our words and behavior, at least in public. In this extreme state, however, Jupiter in Capricorn may manifest as a tendency to consider oneself above the ethical codes that apply to mortals, and thus devise one's own ethics that may not necessarily cater to others. Jupiter in Capricorn may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by defining a goal and taking strategic steps towards reaching that goal. As Capricorn's energy is also connected with one's vocation in life, with Jupiter in Capricorn, one can also make a career out of Jupiterian themes such as a religion, comedy, or philosophy. The pursuit of meaning can also become a lifelong project with Jupiter placed in the sign associated with longevity. In its extreme form, we may never feel satisfied with our understanding of life. We may constantly search for a more practical or useful philosophy that can help us navigate life on a daily basis. As the archetype of Capricorn is associated with the relentless focus on the usefulness of things, with the concentration of this energy in the chart, we may easily conclude that if something is not useful, it is not relevant. With Jupiter in Capricorn, this may very well become a life philosophy, that meaningful experiences are those that prove to be useful either for the individual or for others. This pragmatic approach is exquisitely reflected in a line by the American poet Emily Dickinson, who had this placement in her natal chart. "If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain." However, an individual with Jupiter in Capricorn may completely dismiss the meaning implied in things that are not necessarily useful, such as beauty or stillness. It is important, therefore, for individuals with this placement to consciously develop an appreciation for the meaning of life as reflected in its many forms, useful and useless, and to meditate upon life every now and then as a beautiful, inexplicable miracle, and not just as a highly efficient system that has to be approached pragmatically all the time. Jupiter in air signs. Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini symbolizes a flexible philosophical approach to life based on constant inquiry and curiosity. Gemini represents movement, data gathering, and diversity. Therefore, Jupiter in Gemini signals that our philosophical framework is open to a variety of possibilities. It may even change over the course of a lifetime. The psyche is relatively comfortable juggling different ideas or experimenting with new aspects of understanding. In some cases, the person may literally find prosperity in all that symbolizes the Gemini archetype: movement, verbal exchange, media, or manual activities. Oprah Winfrey is a great example of a comfortable Jupiter in Gemini. Her material prosperity comes from her TV show and the ability to engage a variety of people in spontaneous conversation. Incidentally, in her case, Jupiter is also situated in a grand trine, connecting her Gemini-flavored philosophy of life with her Aquarian stellium of personal planets and a generational Neptune in Libra, which can convey collective appeal. Jupiter in Gemini may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by keeping an open mind and an experimental attitude. In other words, life is a series of possibilities to choose from. The philosophical agility of Jupiter in Gemini may help us deal with difficult experiences in a more lighthearted manner, as meaning can be reacquired at any moment by changing our philosophical lenses if necessary. An integrated Jupiter in Gemini can therefore help us reframe our traumatic experiences in a way that is in more harmony with our ultimate goal of recovery. By reinterpreting the trauma, we may be able to shift our psychological focus from the pain to the meaning of that experience, accelerating and facilitating our recovery process. An unintegrated Jupiter in Gemini, however, may signal that we tend to prioritize information over emotion, i.e., we may want to learn about our problems without necessarily feeling our issues and sorting them out on an emotional level. In this case, we may skip over the psychological re-encounter with any traumatic experience and just distract ourselves from the trauma by gathering information about it and not addressing it on a heart level. As psychoanalysis has taught us, sometimes the ability to re-encounter the wound is necessary for the healing process to take place on the level of the emotional body. An unintegrated Jupiter in Gemini may, however, dismiss this fact. Jupiter in Libra. Jupiter in Libra symbolizes a philosophical search for the inclusion of dualities in life, perhaps best illustrated by the crescents of yin-yang symbols complementing each other and thus creating the full circle of existence. Libra is the archetype of binaries forming a balanced whole. Jupiter in Libra therefore indicates a philosophical mind frame that constantly seeks to balance itself by considering equal portions of contradictory concepts. The individual may seek wholeness by finding all scattered ideological, religious, or philosophical pieces of the puzzle and looking at them as complementary rather than contradictory. The key to prosperity for Jupiter in Libra is strictly relational, i.e., developing a life philosophy through considering the other, why the other exists in the first place, how the other is similar to us or different from us. Jupiter in Libra learns through relating, be it to oneself, to a tree, or to a lover. Excluding all other factors in the chart, individuals with integrated Jupiter in Libra are normally eager to embark on a journey toward the other in order to explore the many wonders of relating and connecting. Negatively, however, this placement may signify philosophical issues or psychological blocks regarding the concept of relating. In either case, on a mundane level, this placement may show that relationships of any sort, splendid or horrible, can bring unique opportunities for growth to our lives. Often the most profound levels of spiritual and philosophical growth can take place through interaction and connection with the other. In this case, a bitter divorce can be as conducive to obtaining unmatched wisdom as a happy marriage. With this placement, therefore, whatever comes to pass in a relational sphere is meant to be cosmically meaningful and somehow planned by our higher consciousness. Jupiter in Libra may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by dwelling in an ideological space of paradox. This approach reminds us of the wisdom imparted by hexagram 15 of the ancient oracle I Ching, also known as the give and take principle. Anything true that excludes something else being true is only a temporary, short-lived truth. A well-integrated Jupiter in Libra stays open to truth as a concept containing many layers of contradiction. After making such a philosophical commitment to the paradoxical nature of truth, we can then delineate an ethical system that is ready to stay forever poised in a space containing incongruous dualities, instead of simply tilting toward one side of the equation and thus, as I Ching succinctly mentioned, relegating the eternal truth to a temporal one. On a mundane level, Jupiter in Libra may signify that relationships can form or modify our ideological and philosophical frame of reference. An unintegrated Jupiter in Libra may form a rather embittered vision of the world or experience a complete loss of meaning just because a lover said something bad or did something wrong. In a constant effort to balance the scales of being, Libra may indeed fall into abysmal extremes. After all, nothing is easier than tipping the scales of a constantly rope-juggling mind. Jupiter in Aquarius. Jupiter in Aquarius symbolizes philosophical objectivity and idealism. Aquarius is generally linked to altruism and collective concern. Jupiter in Aquarius may thus produce a philosophical tendency toward utopian dreams or ideals emanating from the higher consciousness. According to the theories derived from evolutionary astrology, any planetary placement in Aquarius may also hint at trauma regarding the archetype represented by that planet. Therefore, Jupiter in Aquarius may alternatively be interpreted as a possibility of unconscious trauma regarding Jupiterian themes, such as religion, higher learning, or a search for meaning in life. An unintegrated Jupiter in Aquarius hints at possible past life, residual memories of religious dogmatism, learning disability, or challenges regarding interaction with foreigners or those coming from a different cultural or ideological background. More profoundly, we may have experienced a general loss of meaning in life at one point in the prior cycle or early in our current life. In either case, Jupiter in Aquarius may find prosperity in connecting with the collective, either through art, for example, internationally renowned composers Miles Davis and Peter Gabriel, as a politician, Barack Obama, or through performing simple acts of philanthropy and helping social causes. Jupiter in Aquarius may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by considering what is meaningful to the collective and aiding others to achieve their dreams in life. By shifting focus from ourselves to others, we can build lasting social structures and help humanity move forward, even if on a small scale. Alternatively, as Aquarian energy is also connected with sounds and the faculty of hearing, we may be able to find a meaningful career or develop a soul-satisfying hobby regarding sounds. For example, as a musician or sound therapist, or listening ability, for example, as a counselor or politician. Interestingly enough, an individual with this placement may often notice that exposure to exotic music or indecipherable languages can open the door to higher perception. As this placement may also indicate a degree of traumatic experiences regarding Jupiterian themes, one may find meaning in life by helping others heal from those very themes. For example, a politician who has experienced racism or sexism may campaign against this type of prejudice. Similarly, if we are already in a religious or political position, we may be more open to addressing Aquarian themes effectively. For example, as a legislator, we may support the LGBTQ community or endorse the freedom for religious minorities. With this placement, healing often arrives through championing the cause of others and making sure that one has lifted oneself above the limitations of prejudgment. Jupiter in water signs. Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer symbolizes an ideological approach to life based on everything that makes us feel secure. In this sense, our basic life philosophy may have been directly derived from or affected by our familial conditioning or ancestral lineage. If a certain religious or ideological trend runs in the family, we may adopt it without much intellectual probing. In other words, as long as a theoretical frame of reference makes us feel emotionally safe and comfortable, we can effortlessly operate within it. As the energy of Cancer is connected with family, a comfortable Jupiter in this position may indicate that we feel inspired by our family members, or their presence makes us feel emotionally safe. Alternatively, we may feel morally supported by our family or homeland, knowing that our lifestyle, religion, or philosophy is approved and encouraged. In this situation, living abroad or staying out of touch with our family members may not feel right. If Jupiter is stressed in this position, however, we may experience the opposite scenario. We may believe that our family somehow limits us or cuts our wings. We may even feel burdened by certain religious beliefs or the ideological convictions of our family members. Our sense of belonging may also be tied to following family traditions or demonstrating loyalty to national or ancestral heritage. If we are uncomfortable with these ideologies or traditions, we may feel that we cannot emotionally ground ourselves or become truly happy. Jupiter in Cancer may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by allowing our heart to stay open to grace, rather than resorting to an ideological system derived from our comfort zone or familial bonds. It may be valuable to contemplate why in ancient astrology Jupiter was considered exalted in Cancer. A logical conjecture may be related to the ideological value system dominating traditional societies in the past, or even now in some parts of the world. One is to follow the religion or worldview of one's ancestors without questioning too much. In traditional societies, this is normally considered a virtue or an ethical act. On the other hand, deviating from the ideology or religion handed down by one's motherland or ancestral lineage is considered unethical and even taboo. As Jupiter in Cancer archetypally links our vision of life to our familiar surroundings, we should remain vigilant not to sacrifice open-minded inquiry to emotional complacency. With an uncomfortable Jupiter in Cancer, we may have difficulty maintaining philosophical or ideological objectivity. If we have an opportunity to investigate religious or philosophical systems different from ours, we may get anxious or feel on a gut level that we are doing something wrong. We may even feel that by deviating from the religion or ideology we were born into, we are betraying our family or becoming unfaithful to our beloved ones. It is imperative to understand that fiery Jupiter will not be comfortable in Cancer waters if not given a chance to investigate familiar religious or lifelong ideological convictions. Allowing this process to unfold with love and compassion will guarantee we will not fall into dogmatism out of comfort. Jupiter in Scorpio. Jupiter in Scorpio symbolizes a personal and passionate philosophical approach to life, based on intuition and instinct. As scorpionic energy is connected with the deep waters of the soul, Jupiter in this sign denotes that our philosophical convictions may have been derived from our soul impressions or karmic path in life. On a mundane level, Jupiter in Scorpio also conveys that our outlook on life can actually change as a result of soul bonding with the other. If we are to be married to someone coming from a different religious or cultural background, for example, we may feel that converting to their religion or ideology will be a sure token of commitment. It is not uncommon, therefore, for people with this placement to adopt a different ideological system to prove their love and fidelity to their beloved ones, or to raise a family without much religious or ideological clash. If Jupiter is stressed, however, we may feel insecure about letting go of our religious or ideological convictions. We may even feel threatened by anyone coming from a different cultural, ideological, or religious background. Modifying our worldview may take life or death dimensions, and we may conclude that our survival depends on sticking to our faith or philosophical frame of reference. Jupiter in Scorpio may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is by keeping our souls open to change. However, we must commit ourselves to the spiritual path we choose at any moment. In other words, we must keep our hearts in a simultaneous state of absolute suppleness and absolute fidelity. This is a difficult task to accomplish, yet one that will bring us immense satisfaction. As scorpionic energy is also associated with hidden aspects of life, meaning may come through the most remote sources. Crisis can make us wiser. The death of someone near and dear to us alternatively can open the door to spiritual perception. We may understand the true meaning of our lives in a moment of sexual ecstasy or heartbreak. Tapping into the dark corners of our desires and dreams may also be a wonderful way of achieving wisdom in life. Individuals with unintegrated Jupiter and Scorpio may feel scared of their own wisdom. They may unconsciously stay in ideological dogma or never truly grow. Alternatively, they may have very fixed ideas about their sexuality, spiritual path, or heart desires. They may have difficulty adjusting to newer versions of themselves when natural changes occur as a result of inner growth. In this case, they may crusade against themselves, denying the truth of personal transformation and continuing old habits that can no longer serve the soul. Individuals with this placement therefore have to stay vigilant about the possibility of undermining themselves, spiritually or psychologically. Jupiter in Scorpio holds the key to hidden treasures that can easily be lost if we dwell in fear of our own power and wisdom. Jupiter in Pisces symbolizes an eclectic philosophical approach to life, one that may significantly shift and become more inclusive as one moves through different phases of life. With this placement, we are generally open to a variety of ideological or religious possibilities, as the energy of Pisces encourages an all-encompassing approach that is fundamentally in harmony with Jupiter's expansive nature. A comfortable Jupiter in Pisces, therefore, will guide us to the right teachers, the right type of synchronicities, the right type of dreams, and the right type of artistic inspiration. With this placement, we can achieve an unparalleled degree of spiritual wisdom without setting foot in a school or conference. The key is to guard the holy flame of spiritual seeking in our hearts and surrender our intellectual convictions to the higher cravings of the soul. An uncomfortable Jupiter in Pisces, in contrast, indicates that defining a personal life philosophy or adhering to any ideological conviction may be difficult or undesirable for us. Therefore, we may feel spiritually lost or philosophically disoriented at times. We may even experience existential angst, exasperated by intellectual underachievement or blocks on our spiritual path. This placement also implies that the soul is highly idealistic and prone to disappointment. Sometimes there is a fork in the road. We may feel undecided between our hearts and minds, or we may simply be unsure how to proceed. With Jupiter in Pisces, the ideal course of action is surrendering the issue to the higher wisdom and remaining quietly vigilant in order to receive a hint regarding which direction to choose. Jupiter in Pisces may signify that the most effective way of finding meaning in life is through meditation and silence. As Jupiter feels relatively comfortable in the boundless waters of Pisces, the meaning of life can only be a breath away with this placement. Just sit and listen. Alternatively, meaning can enter our existence through interdisciplinary studies. The more flexible we are with acquiring knowledge from all sources and teachers, regardless of our particular religious or cultural tendencies, the more gracefully our soul will open itself to higher wisdom. As the last mutable sign in the zodiac circle, Pisces is associated with connecting all the cognitive dots that were originally gathered, organized, and systemized through the energy of the previous mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius. To see the visible thread that ties all the seemingly unrelated systems of knowledge leads to true wisdom, one that is married to love and therefore wiser than wisdom. Jupiter in houses. Jupiter in the first house. With Jupiter placed in the first house of the natal chart, our instinctual way of seeing the world is colored by a profound belief in the meaningfulness of everything that comes to pass. As the first house of the birth chart largely operates on a pre-verbal level, The energy symbolized by the planets positioned here cannot be consciously comprehended. Therefore, we may simply take these energies for granted, assuming that these forces are equally operative in other people's lives as well. In fact, the planets placed in the first house largely function in a preconscious manner, in contrast to the unconscious mode of planetary operation in the 12th house. This means that the energy symbolized by these planets comprise an unchangeable fundamental element in the psyche of the individual, which in turn affects and filters every other energy symbolized in the chart. With Jupiter in the first house, we are bound to see meaning in everything, even if we are not particularly philosophical or interested in research and investigation. The closer Jupiter is to the ascendant, the more emphatically this energy will assert itself. We may not be naturally drawn to a life of learning, teaching, or preaching because of the presence of other planetary energies in the chart, but there will be a deep, instinctive, indescribable certainty in the meaningfulness of life at the core of our existence that will subtly guide our actions or decisions, even if we are not fully aware of its influence. As mentioned earlier in this section of Jupiter in Sagittarius, Hermann Hesse, with Jupiter in the first house of his natal chart, explained how this energy may operate on a preconscious rather than conscious level. Knowledge can be communicated, but not wisdom. One can find it, live it, be fortified by it, do wonders through it, but one cannot communicate and teach it. It is imperative for individuals with Jupiter in the first house, or generally Jupiter prominent in the birth chart, to understand that they may have a built-in teleological approach to existence that may not manifest in the same manner in the lives of other people around them. Some individuals are capable of living a simple life without being interrupted by philosophical questions or spiritual quests. The fact that one needs meaning to psychologically operate does not make one better or worse than the rest of the population. Therefore, we should stay aware of the possible pitfalls of pompous behavior or self-righteousness. If Jupiter functions in an integrated manner in this position, it will ideally imbue the individual's internal perceptions with a degree of reception and serenity. This is the direct result of trust in the higher wisdom and instinctual certainty that everything happens for a reason. Such a perception can help us during hardship or misfortune. Often, an individual with a healthy Jupiter in the first house can survive the toughest turns of events simply because he or she instinctively believes that all will be fine in the end. If Jupiter is not well integrated, however, we may filter too much reality in favor of faith, or simply gloss over unpleasant facts in favor of a beautiful vision. Missing the trees for the forest will be a common phenomenon in this case, which may make it difficult for us to assess reality without magnifying some aspects or diminishing others. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the first house is, I surrender my personal will to the will of the higher wisdom. Jupiter in the second house. With Jupiter placed in the second house of the natal chart, we may feel larger than life, wanting to possess all that is within our reach. The second house of the birth chart is usually associated with the psychological stage of developing object constancy. At this stage, a child realizes that people or objects continue being there even if they are temporarily out of sight. The presence of uncomfortable social or collective planets in this area of the chart may at times hint at possible interruption in this process. In this case, later in life, the individual may display excessive attachment or an exaggerated level of detachment in relation to the people or objects around him or her. Alternatively, if heavy energies are present in this area of the natal chart, we may tend to register a rather fixed sense of the world, demonstrating an unusual degree of resistance to change regarding our environment or personal habits, as if we are trying to compensate for the unreliable parents or unpredictable childhood environment that failed to provide certainty and constancy when we were going through this developmental stage. Individuals with Jupiter in the second house need their space, literal or metaphorical. They may also exhibit psychological largeness, a colorful lifestyle, generous attitude, and habitual indulgences. If they do not naturally gravitate toward frugality or control based on the presence of other factors in the chart, they may waste material resources or have difficulties efficiently saving time and energy. It is imperative for individuals with this placement to understand that they may tend to surpass their own natural limits and therefore feel burned out at times. We have to reach for the stars, but it is equally important to have our feet firmly on the ground and plant the seeds of success here and now. Many individuals with this placement have a clear vision of success in their minds, but they also have to be careful not to turn into mere visionaries without an inclination to act, or even worse, autocrats whose only goal is to keep themselves satisfied in the process. The reason for the cautionary note is that with the second house placements, we may still have a toddler inside who wants it all, as the second house symbolizes this particular stage of life when object constancy is formed. Toddlers are rightfully selfish as they navigate a developmental process that requires them to establish a secure sense of the world by retaining and owning things. An adult whose psychological development has been disrupted at this stage, however, may display similar self-gratifying behavior out of context. In this case, we may feel that things or people must belong to us, otherwise we may not be able to appreciate or love them in a mature way. If Jupiter functions well in this position, it symbolizes material comfort and appreciation of the finer things in life. At a higher level, this placement may bestow a Buddha-like quality upon the individual, which is the ability to just sit and enjoy oneself. Abundance may come in the form of satisfying moments of bliss or sensual pleasure, or even a lottery win, especially if Jupiter aspects comfortable planets in the 5th, 8th, or 11th houses of the birth chart. Alternatively, with a comfortable Jupiter here, we may simply value, a second house word, Jupiterian themes, such as traveling, foreign interactions, or expansion of material or intellectual resources. If Jupiter is stressed in the birth chart, however, we may become greedy or insecure with matters concerning money or material resources. We may never feel fully satisfied with what we already have, including our bodies, talents, or personal possessions. Alternatively, we may believe that we are not living up to our own standards, or we may tend to dwell on feelings of disappointment and self-pity. We may believe that we are supposed to be better than what we already are. In addition, we may feel underappreciated by our immediate family, close friends, or the environment. In this case, we have to be aware of our psychological tendency to exaggerate or diminish certain aspects of ourselves. Therefore, we have to strive for a less biased, more balanced point of view regarding who we are and what we are meant to do in this world. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the second house is, I have all I need, and I love all I have. Jupiter in the third house. With Jupiter placed in the third house of the natal chart, we usually have a curious, inquisitive nature, especially regarding matters taken for granted by others, such as inherited ideological and religious conventions. The third house of the birth chart is usually associated with cognitive development and language learning. Therefore, some individuals with this placement have an above-average ability to acquire foreign languages and develop communication skills relatively early in life. It is not uncommon for children with this placement to start walking and talking earlier than expected. In addition, they may learn how to read and write before others in their peer group. These children may develop motor skills faster than others and may also show a higher degree of social intelligence in interacting with their teachers and classmates. Regardless of their social or economic background, individuals with Jupiter in the third house tend to rely on the power of learning to improve their quality of life. Unless unusually challenged, Jupiter in this house symbolizes sociability. People with this placement are usually easy to talk to or become friends with. Quite a number of multi-talented individuals, including polyglots or polymaths, as well as politicians whose persuasive talks have influenced the masses, for better or worse, have had these placements in their natal charts. Jupiter in the third house in some cases may mean abundance coming to our lives through siblings, relatives, friends, or matters regarding media and communication. Quite a number of motivational speakers or life coaches who earn a living through their verbal skills, as well as best-selling authors and celebrated media personalities, have Jupiter in the third house or an association with Mercury in their birth charts. With this placement, we will need a constant degree of mental stimulation or lifelong permission to explore and experiment with different forms of thought. There usually exists a desire to go beyond common sense and be adventurous. Early exposure to foreign languages and cultures can help channel this energy constructively. Playing with and relating to playmates or siblings has a significant role in the cognitive development of a child with this natal placement. If Jupiter is uncomfortable here, it may symbolize that the individual has been affected by the presence of a condition or problem pertaining to a playmate or sibling in early childhood or during adolescence. It is imperative for us to also learn how to focus on mundane details when necessary, as we may have a natural tendency to look at the bigger picture all the time. Concentrating on a single task may indeed become a Herculean task with Jupiter in the third house, especially for a child who has to adjust to the numerous demands of a teacher or an educational system. A strict pedagogical approach is rarely constructive in this case. Instead, a tutor who is gently accepting of the child's natural expansive curiosity and doesn't feel bored or threatened by questions can help the child enjoy the process of learning and grow into an adult who is secure in his or her cognitive ability and capable of forming an unbiased worldview. If Jupiter functions well in this position, it symbolizes open-mindedness and healthy curiosity in the individual's mental life. At a higher level, this placement may also encourage the ability to bridge various fields of knowledge and discover similarities between seemingly unrelated concepts. Choosing an interdisciplinary field of study rather than pursuing a strictly focused branch of knowledge may be a wise choice for an individual with this natal placement. With an integrated Jupiter here, the mind is usually agile and ready to absorb all that is initially foreign. Therefore, the general ability to adapt to new environments and adjust to new lifestyles is normally enhanced as well. If the Jupiterian function is not well integrated, however, we run the risk of becoming biased in our worldview or even fanatical regarding a certain ideological system, religious doctrine, or a particular lifestyle. In this case, Jupiter may symbolize a condemning, self-righteous attitude that is not tolerant of cultural differences or ideological divergence. In extreme cases, we may even feel compelled to completely obliterate that which is different or foreign, as we may feel the urge to respond to an ethical, religious, or ideological impetus to do so. Adolf Hitler would be an apt example in this case. With an uncomfortable Jupiter in the third house of his natal chart, he considered his personal ideology as the only good ideology for a whole nation, and not only imposed it on the people of his own country, but also millions of people residing in neighboring countries and beyond. Interestingly enough, the well-known philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein, who was born only 6 days after Adolf Hitler in the same country, Austria, had a very similar Jupiterian placement, Jupiter in the third house, Capricorn, disposited by a challenged Saturn in Leo. Yet in his case, it seems that Jupiter was much better integrated, as Wittgenstein mostly used his Jupiterian function in his career, philosophy. During his early philosophical investigations, he famously remarked, "The world is my world. This is manifest in the fact that the limits of language, of that language which alone I understand, means the limits of my world." Jupiter in the third house of Wittgenstein's, the Jupiter chart symbolizes a capacity to acknowledge one's ontological limits as a result of one's cognitive limits, and not a bias towards one's view of the world as the only valid way of perception, as was the case with Hitler. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the third house is, "I will never know enough, but I trust I will know what I need to know." Jupiter in the fourth house. With Jupiter placed in the 4th house of the natal chart, we usually enjoy an inner sense of spaciousness and emotional joviality. Alternatively, we may be on the receiving end of some form of family or ancestral heritage that can eventually shape our worldview, for better or worse. The 4th house of the birth chart is associated with inner space, our roots in the past, our ancestral heritage, and our emotional conditioning. With Jupiter located in this position, we may feel like the branch of a tree growing in a vast landscape connected to something primordial that extends far beyond the scope of our contemporary existence. Therefore, this particular placement in the natal chart may also be associated with heavy ideological conditioning that we may have inherited and stored in the emotional body, to the extent that consciousness of such conditioning may prove to be particularly difficult. As the 4th house of the natal chart is also associated with the early stages of adolescence and emotional growth, individuals with a challenged Jupiter here may have experienced some form of restriction regarding their need for growth, space, or ideological independence during this particular period of life. Later, this constant restraint in their initial emotional conditioning may generate a constant need for movement. This may include changing places of residence or becoming excessively obsessed with personal freedom. In either case, a consciousness of the mechanisms operative in our inner world can always pave the way for real freedom in life. This is freedom from our own different layers of conditioning imposed on our soul by our family members, society, or peer group in the early stages of life. Individuals with Jupiter in the 4th house tend to approach life with the heart rather than the head. Unless unusually challenged, Jupiter symbolizes an innate inclination toward hope and trust. People with this placement are usually reluctant to stay too long in a space of pessimism or dwell on negative emotions. There usually exists a degree of optimism around family, and in some cases this placement may symbolize a large or extended family, a multicultural or multiracial family environment, or family members with Jupiterian characteristics such as world travelers, teachers, or advisors, and negatively gamblers or overreachers. As the Spanish philosopher and writer George Santayana, who had this placement in his natal chart, optimistically stated, in most cases when Jupiter comfortably resides in the 4th house, one may feel that the family is one of nature's masterpieces. For those with a well-integrated Jupiter here, the family may indeed be a source of joy and abundance. However, if Jupiter is challenged in this position, the individual or parental or ancestral figure may have had issues regarding mistrust or misplaced faith in something or someone. Furthermore, it is not uncommon for individuals with a challenged Jupiter in the 4th house to expect too much from their family. They may overestimate the ability of their family members to provide them with material comfort, opportunities for growth, or tools for creating an abundant life. In some cases, the individual may simply like to exaggerate some aspects of family life. In other cases, the individual may be overwhelmed by something excessive in family dynamics or regarding one particular family member. With this natal placement, it is imperative for us to cultivate a deep trust in the higher wisdom of the heart. We should not let a desire to dramatize events overshadow the natural gifts of a generous heart that the universe has bestowed upon us. Jupiter usually symbolizes a plethora of various expectations in the area of the chart it occupies. Therefore, it is crucial that we stay aware of the possibility of our own exaggerated or unrealistic expectations, especially regarding what our family or homeland can offer us. Likewise, our emotional happiness should always be viewed as something stemming from the inside rather than being found outside of us. The wise path in the case of an individual with Jupiter in the 4th house is a path of emotional observation and moderation. As the English novelist and poet Thomas Hardy, who had this placement in his natal chart, beautifully summarized this strategy. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Developing a habit of feeling secure inside and holding a firm belief that we carry the whole universe in our hearts, no matter when, where, or with whom we live, can alleviate some of the dissatisfaction or restlessness that may arise when Jupiter here conjuncts heavy planets or gets triggered by heavy transits during various periods of life. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 4th house is, I am perfectly blessed, dwelling in the silence of space of my own heart. Jupiter in the 5th house. With Jupiter placed in the 5th house of the natal chart, we usually have access to a regenerative source of creativity, one that never fails to inspire. A childlike ability to enjoy the wonders of the present moment and bask in the sheer glory of existence may also exist in us, if other factors in the chart do not hint at a gloomy psychological disposition. Alternatively, we may be able to connect very well with children or enjoy the presence of children, biological or otherwise, in our lives. The 5th house of the birth chart is usually associated with our ability to love and appreciate ourselves and others as an extension of us. Therefore, Jupiter here can often bring a sense of faith in oneself, depending on the overall energy of the chart and how well integrated the Jupiterian functions are. We may develop healthy self-appreciation and trust in who we are. Alternatively, we may expect too much of ourselves or put too much faith in our own individual philosophy or worldview, possibly even to the point of becoming dumbfounded by our own intellectual grandeur or spiritual glory. As the 5th house is also associated with adolescence, Jupiter's presence may signal a significant ideological formation or shift in the worldview during this period of life. Alternatively, if Jupiter is stressed in this part of the chart, we may have experienced some form of extremity or disruption during the teen years, which could have affected our self-confidence or self-integrity as an adult later in life. Individuals with Jupiter in the 5th house tend to view life as filled with warmth and colors. They may display a high degree of wit or intellectual playfulness, or they may have a rare ability to be amused by themselves. As the brilliant poet and playwright Oscar Wilde, who had this placement in his natal chart, aptly stated, "To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance." Interestingly enough, some individuals with this placement have turned their talent or hobbies into creative and lucrative professions, as the energy of a well-integrated Jupiter in the 5th house may very well translate to abundance coming from creative endeavors. The internationally famous horror writer Stephen King, for example, has his natal Jupiter in the 5th house in Scorpio, and has turned his fascination with horror and crime, scorpionic subject matters, into a profitable creative hobby, the 5th house. If Jupiter is not well integrated here, we may display behaviors stemming from narcissism, inferiority complex, or superiority complex. It is not uncommon for individuals with a challenged Jupiter in the 5th house to expect too much of themselves or those they love. As a result, they may enter into a vicious cycle of narcissistic inferiority complex, fed by believing that they are the center of the universe. In some cases, the individual may actually come across as both benevolent and malevolent, as the ideological aspect of Jupiter in the 5th house may simultaneously encourage generosity of the spirit and narrow-minded selfishness. This is best illustrated in the case of the German physician Joseph Mengele, who had a well-aspected Jupiter in the 5th house of his natal chart, Jupiter in a water grand trine with Neptune and Sun Mercury. Having earned a PhD in anthropology, he performed deadly human experiments on concentration camp prisoners as part of his scientific research. A former Auschwitz inmate doctor said of him, "He was capable of being so kind to the children, to have them become fond of him, to bring them sugar, to think of small details in their daily lives, and to do things we would generally admire. And then next to that, the crematoria smoke, and these children, tomorrow or in a half hour he is going to send them there." Well, that is where the anomaly lay. Individuals with Jupiter in the 5th house should stay vigilant regarding the possibility of moral grandeur or spiritual egotism, maintaining an objective view of one's ideological or ethical limits, and using one's intellect or abundance at the service of progress and happiness for all is the ultimate evolutionary goal of Jupiter in the 5th house. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 5th house is, joy multiplies through me and flows to the universe to bless all. Jupiter in the 6th house. With Jupiter placed in the 6th house of the natal chart, we may display an above average analytical capacity, an intuitive understanding of logic, and an inclination toward deductive thinking and mathematical definitions. The style of perceiving the world may be metacognitive yet methodical. With the expansive Jupiter placed in an area of the chart that represents dissection and examination, we may be able to intuitively understand complicated systems that function based on the interaction of quantified parts, such as music or chemistry. The 6th house of the birth chart is usually associated with our ability to maintain routines and complete projects using a step-by-step approach. Jupiter here may indicate a degree of impatience in dealing with practical aspects of life, often as a result of unbridled enthusiasm, a proclivity to boredom, or having too many interests to focus on any one of them at any given moment. Some individuals with this placement may indeed find it difficult to repeat certain processes or follow linear instructions to perfect themselves or achieve a certain goal. Others may fall into the opposite extreme of obsessive repetition or strict exercise in hopes of achieving perfection or quieting their criticizing mind. In either case, irregularities in our scheduled daily routine, health pattern, or dietary regimen can be expected with this placement in the natal chart. Alternatively, Jupiterian themes such as teaching, traveling, or connecting with larger groups may be present or simply comprise an integral part of our work routine. As the 6th house is also associated with the early 20s, the stage during which a teenager becomes a university student or paid employee, Jupiter here may indicate a significant ideological formation or shift in the worldview during this period of life. Academic friends or mentors may leave a special impact on us, or certain habits may be formed during this time that may be difficult to change later. Alternatively, if Jupiter is stressed, we may experience health issues, mental or physical strain, obsessive or compulsive tendencies, or difficulty managing our daily existence on a practical level. Individuals with Jupiter in the 6th house tend to perceive life as composed of many chores that must be tackled over a limited period. As such, they may be acutely aware of their practical limitations. Therefore, they may experience anxiety in deciding how to allocate their time to the various pursuits in life. They may display a high tolerance for unpredictability, though, and they can usually adjust themselves to various environments or people without much difficulty. As they normally evaluate things and situations with an open mind, they can connect well with others, especially through working on mutual projects or toward a common goal. Unless Jupiter is highly challenged in the chart, an individual with this placement usually shows healthy respect and curiosity toward people coming from all walks of life. Unless influenced by the presence of other factors in the chart, such as a highlighted Saturn or Venus, a comfortable Jupiter in the 6th house usually indicates that social status or wealth does not interfere with our ability to mingle with those who may be significantly different from us, since we would probably evaluate others based on their ideological or intellectual merits rather than social position or wealth. This, however, may be stretched to the point of completely dismissing the importance of practicality, steadfastness, or resourcefulness in favor of intellect or courage. If Jupiter here is not well integrated, we may experience an existential sense of inferiority and compensate through a relentless pursuit of status, wealth, or wisdom. Obsessive or compulsive patterns of thinking or behavior can also emerge, which at times can be misinterpreted as a tendency to be hardworking or diligent. Ideological, spiritual, or religious doubts may also arise, affecting our ability to maintain faith in the ultimate wisdom, intelligence, or meaningfulness of the Jupiterian bigger picture we are a part of. It is not uncommon for individuals with a challenged Jupiter in the 6th house to overexercise or follow an extreme diet in pursuit of the perfect body. Alternatively, an attraction toward the downtrodden or idealization of inferiority in its various forms may exist, which in some cases may incline the individual toward easily relenting in the face of demands for help or charity. The probability of being taken advantage of by those who like to resign themselves to victimhood in life may still remain high in this case. Individuals with Jupiter here should pay close attention to their dealings with others. They should also carefully evaluate their motives for offering help or service. Are they helping or serving others as a philanthropic gesture, or is it because they secretly romanticize inferiority? In either case, the evolutionary purpose of Jupiter in the 6th house is to place importance on all the small gestures in life. Perhaps our ability to offer a simple smile or a kind word to others is our very raison d'être. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 6th house is, "Every day I will do one small thing in the spirit of serving others." Jupiter in the 7th house. With Jupiter placed in the 7th house of the natal chart, we tend to search for meaning through interaction with others. As the 7th house of the birth chart is where we normally project onto as a geometric opposite point to the ascendant, it may also comprise what we traditionally refer to as the shadow content of the psyche. In other words, what we tend to dispossess in our one-on-one interactions may be symbolized by the condition of the 7th house, its sign and planetary ruler, as well as any planets residing in it and functioning as expositors of other planets in the chart. With Jupiter here, the other is often perceived as responsible for providing meaning or guidance. Much of what we spiritually yearn for may be projected onto the other without much intention or awareness. In this case, the other will be that ever-elusive entity that we may spend a lifetime searching for and yet never quite manage to catch up with. Alternatively, we may simply perceive life as void of purpose or meaning if the other is not ready to participate in the game of existence with us. The highly praised Russian novelist and literary critic Vladimir Nabokov, who had this placement in his chart, beautifully encapsulated this energy by appealing to his readers of Lolita. "I need you, the reader, to imagine us, for we don't really exist if you don't." In a similar manner, we may experience an existential crisis if the other fails to cooperate or respond adequately. The interactive nature of meaning in our psyche elicits a certain degree of collaboration and relationship. As a result, individuals with an unintegrated Jupiter here may become besotted by a particular other and see this individual as their sole reason for existing. In most cases, all the good would be projected onto this object of desire, while all the evil would be preserved for oneself. "What did I do to make her leave me?" Or, "He cheated on me because I was not good enough," as we may have heard from family members or friends. Such a good-evil polarity that is merely created in our psyche will hold enormous power over us. As long as we see others as angels and ourselves as devils, there always exists a possibility of being taken advantage of, controlled, or played with. In fact, the two main characters in Nabokov's Lolita, the middle-aged professor Humbert, the repetition of his name perfectly symbolizes his tendency to get fixated, and the teenage Lolita both reflect such dynamics. It is therefore important for us to pay close attention to our possible tendency to project onto the other our own higher self, or to simply expect philosophical or spiritual orientation to come from the other, which is precisely what we need to reclaim in order to heal. Our orientation in life may be improved through an interaction with the other, but it should not fully depend on the other. If we expel our own sense of meaning and then wait for it to be handed back to us by the other, we will create psychological dependence and even obsession with the other, which will interfere with our ability to establish a mutually satisfying relationship on equal terms. If Jupiter functions in an integrated manner in this position, the other may bring us many blessings, including the gift of self-knowledge through meaningful interaction or exchange. We may benefit from the expertise of the other, or receive valuable psychological or philosophical insight by acknowledging the presence of the other. Alternatively, the other may come to us in the guise of God, the ultimate other, who provokes in us a philosophical yearning or spiritual quest that can give us meaning or direction in life. As the Persian Sufi poets believed, the moment we yearn for God, we can be certain that God is already yearning for us, as no lover can walk the path of love without the implicit invitation of the beloved. On the philosophical level, Jupiter in the 7th house invites us to stay open to infinity and unknowingness. As the French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas stated, if one could possess, grasp, and know the other, it would not be other. The ultimate form of integration of the energy symbolized by Jupiter here would be maintaining a degree of psychological openness to the other and all that is offered, which may also include the possibility of change and yet not completely losing ourselves in the other. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 7th house is, I celebrate myself in the other and the other in myself. Jupiter in the 8th house. With Jupiter placed in the 8th house of the natal chart, meaning or growth tends to come to our lives through the act of uniting with the other, or psychologically, sexually, or emotionally exposing ourselves to the other. As the 8th house of the birth chart is where we tend to ditch aspects of ourselves we are not comfortable with, Jupiter here may symbolize a psychological tendency to go beyond our woes through humor or by applying Jupiterian means, such as seeking adventure or appealing to alternative frames of reference. In traditional astrology, the 8th house also symbolizes our partner's possessions. Therefore, Jupiter in the 8th house may also signify material abundance or a raise in social or economic status through partnership or marriage. Grace Kelly would be an apt example. She was an actress who became a princess after marrying Prince Rainier III of Monaco. Jupiter is placed in the 8th house of her natal chart, conjuncting the vertex, the point of fated connection, and opposing Juno, the asteroid of marriage and commitment, which in turn is placed in Sagittarius, the sign ruled by Jupiter. With Jupiter in the 8th house, we are usually a receiving vessel for Jupiterian themes rather than an active advocate of them. In other words, Jupiter in this part of the chart tends to operate in a yin fashion by inviting meaning and wisdom into our lives rather than compelling us to launch a spiritual crusade or live a life of religious activism. Similarly, if we have any spiritual or religious tendencies with this placement, we tend to keep them to ourselves, as the 8th house is a private area, and planetary functions here normally stay under the radar. For this reason, the energy of the planets in the 8th house may become eroticized in different ways, as what is hidden in the psyche generates a polarized energy field that can also define or explain our attraction patterns on a psychosexual level. The exotic may very well become the erotic in an individual with Jupiter in the 8th house of the natal chart. In contrast to Jupiter's elevated metaphysical nature, most sophisticated Jupiterian functions such as spiritual growth or intellectual openness seem to come to us through primal physical contact with others. Therefore, we may feel a degree of discomfort in this regard, as is the case with most 8th house placements, and may psychologically banish certain aspects of this archetype. The inevitable result in some cases would be the generation of an erotic energy field around Jupiterian objects or themes. We may feel inexplicably attracted to religious objects or spiritual symbols, or Jupiterian figures such as priests, teachers, mentors, overweight people, foreigners, comedians, or even certain animals and hybrid fantasy creatures. Jupiterian sign Sagittarius is represented by the mythical centaur. The fact that there may exist a social taboo around some of these types of attractions in civilized societies will make the erotic hold of such objects or figures even stronger in the psyche of an individual who is prone to suppression or self-condemnation. If we wish to release ourselves from such a powerful grip in order to use this energy in a more constructive manner, we have to understand that there is no actual division between the higher and the lower in the psyche of the human species, and that an essential part of the human experience is precisely to accept the fact that we have the darkness within the light and the light within the darkness of our souls. By embracing the elevated Jupiterian functions along with performing the all too human lowly activities such as eating, the Freudian oral stage, defecating, anal stage, and mating, genital stage, we will erase the psychic gap between the high and the low, and eventually be released from the unconscious hold generated precisely by maintaining this gap. If Jupiter is functioning in an integrated manner in this part of the chart, we can experience the most elevated form of spiritual grandeur in the most ordinary moments of connection with the other, through a touch, a kiss, or during sexual union. We may learn and grow as a result of intimacy with the other. We may feel that the world is a better place when we share our bodies, memories, money, or affection with the other. Jupiter here resides in Pluto's mansion, as associated with the 8th house. Therefore, God or spiritual enlightenment may also arrive in the guise of crisis, near-death experiences, or inexplicable obsessions or fixations. As manure is essential for the perfume of a rose, the most beautiful things sometimes grow out of misery and decay. Therefore, a well-integrated Jupiter will stay open to receiving God's grace in any shape or form it manifests. If Jupiter is not comfortable in the birth chart, we may stay fixated on certain themes or fantasies, repeating behavioral patterns that harm various aspects of our lives. For example, we may lose the ability to rationally evaluate our sexual partners simply because we are infatuated with certain characteristics of them. Alternatively, we may attract lower vibration Jupiterian types such as religious fanatics, delusional spiritualists, or people who want to play the role of God for us. Similarly, sexual partners may ideologically brainwash us or impose their own beliefs on us. An unintegrated Jupiter in the 8th house may also manifest as excessive attachment to an animal, religious ritual, or ideological system. On a philosophical level, however, Jupiter in this position symbolizes a divine invitation. One is asked to directly participate in the divine scheme of things, to co-create with God. Hence, there is an enormous creative potential hidden here, which is waiting to be tapped. As the French Nobel Prize author André Gide, who had this placement in his chart, beautifully summarized, God depends on us. It is through us that God is achieved. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 8th house is, my heart is open to receiving all that is bestowed upon me. Jupiter in the 9th house. With Jupiter placed in the 9th house, which is the natural house of Jupiter, we usually believe in or critically contemplate the goodness of the cosmos, the fairness of being, or the meaningfulness of existence. Jupiter in this position may function in a manner similar to Jupiter in the 1st house, through the trine relationship between the 1st and 9th house. But the difference is that in the 9th house, Jupiter tends to operate more consciously and less instinctively. As the 9th house of the birth chart is the first space coming immediately after the culmination point of the 8th house, it symbolizes the first point of entry into the higher plane of existence. After the mundane cycle of life concludes in the 8th house of death and rebirth, one's soul is ready to be born into a brand new stage of being, and this is where the magic of the 9th house begins. From an esoteric point of view, as the last solid digit in the sequence of natural numbers, 9 represents perfection and righteousness. It is 3 times 3, the perfection of the Holy Trinity, and it is also the number of planetary spheres in ancient cosmology, the 7 luminaries and planets of traditional astrology, as well as Earth itself and the plane of fixed stars. In tarot and other esoteric traditions, 9 symbolizes accomplishment or the climax of an affair or state of being regarding mundane questions. In Vedic astrology, the 9th house is associated with positive karma, where we get reimbursed for our good deeds or godly intentions. As the house of Jupiter, the 9th house is naturally associated with Jupiterian themes such as gurus or spiritual guides, foreign travel, graduate degrees, or advanced studies, the father, the husband in a woman's chart, or one's general inclination to seek wisdom in life. Furthermore, a lesser-known yet quite interesting connotation of the 9th house can be found in the works of the American astrologer and writer A.T. Mann. The cusp of the 9th house in the birth chart can also represent the moment of conception. and thus any planet placed within the ninth house generally points to the events happening in the internal or external life of our parents shortly after they came together to conceive us. Jupiter here symbolizes a spiritual desire for understanding and seeking something bigger than oneself in life. Even if other factors in the natal chart are not particularly pointing in this direction, Jupiter in the ninth house normally symbolizes that we somehow need to contextualize ourselves in the broad frame of existence in order to psychologically function. This does not necessarily mean we have to seek a spiritual lifestyle or engage in religious or political activities. Instead, it simply means that contemplating the reasons for being here and now forms an important part of our ideological path in life. Cognitive function, symbolized by the third house and Mercury's condition in the natal chart, would also hint at the quality of meaning we seek. If Jupiter is associated with this function through aspecting Mercury being its dispositor or being associated with the ruler of the third house, the need for meaning may become even more prominent in our lives. In this case, pursuing a field of study or a career that allows us to contemplate and constantly learn will be a wise option. If Jupiter is functioning in an integrated manner, we can experience a degree of ease regarding ninth house issues, including faith, expansion, or spirituality. We may feel quite comfortable dealing with foreign cultures or exposing ourselves to unknown concepts. Alternatively, we may seek wisdom through advanced studies, traveling beyond our known world, or experimenting with alternative lifestyles. A well-integrated Jupiter here normally manifests as a well-developed, conscious, and a self-directed rather than other-influenced sense of morality. However, Jupiter may seem to be comfortable, mostly forming soft aspects to other planets in the chart, but in the context of a natal chart that is hinting at unrestrained, distressed primal tendencies, it may only serve to justify all the unscrupulous acts the individual may commit throughout life if he or she has not already developed a degree of self-consciousness and self-monitoring. If Jupiter is not functioning well, we may find it easy to invent a moral system that is merely at the service of our many whims instead of serving the higher good. Universal concepts such as love or mercy may become relative in this case, and we may find convoluted justifications for actions that would normally stir up the protest of a healthy conscience. Interestingly enough, quite a number of criminals who have committed massive crimes in cold blood have had this placement in their natal charts, including the infamous Frederick West. Therefore, it is not difficult to conclude that having a seemingly benefic planet in a seemingly ideal position in the natal chart does not necessarily guarantee the healthy function of that planet if the whole context of the chart is not supportive of that function, or if the individual has not developed consciousness or self-observation regarding the energy symbolized by that planet. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the ninth house is, "The higher good directs all my thoughts, words, and actions." Jupiter in the 10th house. With Jupiter placed in the 10th house, we usually organize our life and career around Jupiterian themes. We may feel on a mission to teach or preach, to advertise our moral or philosophical convictions to a large crowd, or to get engaged in the political or social sphere. In this position, Jupiter represents the need to structure our belief systems so that they can be useful to us or others. Quite a number of individuals with this placement in their natal charts have become well known in Jupiterian fields such as philosophy, religion, teaching, or law and ethics. As the 10th house is the highest point of the chart, the point associated with the sun's position at high noon, a planet in this area usually symbolizes a strong psychological drive to succeed in the area represented by that planet. Jupiter here therefore points to a need to be respected or recognized for better or worse as someone who knows. In some cases, this need for being seen as a knowledgeable figure may push us to reach out to others in similar fields or get extensively engaged in talking, writing, or traveling. Alternatively, the same need may have been present in one or both parents. If Jupiter is comfortable here, the parental figure probably had a healthy desire to push forward and succeed. Therefore, this desire could be instilled into us as well. However, if Jupiter is stressed in this position, our parents' desire for succeeding at any price could have been transmitted to us. This could have encouraged us to boisterously pursue name and fame, regardless of everything else, including our own true desires or preferences in life. A 10th house Jupiter in the natal chart usually symbolizes a spiritual inclination for being acknowledged, i.e., being figuratively included in the pantheon of gods. This does not necessarily have to happen on a large scale, though. Even a small-scale recognition in the immediate social, political, or academic circle may give meaning to the life of an individual with this natal placement. If Jupiter functions well here, we can experience ideological, philosophical, or religious acceptance, or even admiration from our social or political circles. We will have a higher chance of dealing with benevolent authority figures or being recognized as one. King George VI of England, who reluctantly inherited the British throne from his brother, had this placement in his natal chart. Quite an active Jupiter in the 10th house in Leo, the sign associated with royalty, despite his own personal limitations, including his speech impediment, had many social hardships arising during his reign. He has been celebrated as one of the most popular monarchs in England's recent history. Alternatively, we may enjoy a Jupiterian lifestyle that involves a marriage between our vocation and our sense of meaning. Our professional activities may involve exposure to higher wisdom or the constant pursuit of philosophical or religious knowledge. We may find God through executing our life mission, or we may simply feel spiritually dedicated to our vocation. If Jupiter is not integrated, however, morality may be skewed to rationalize our way of being in the world, and we may simply believe that the end justifies the means in all circumstances. In rare cases, we may even feel protected by a higher power while committing unethical acts. We may simply find no reason to ethically justify our actions because we are already conditioned by a bona fide sense of self-righteous authority. The mythical figure of Zeus, i.e. Jupiter himself, whose many divine rapes have been simply viewed as exciting stories or perfectly acceptable narratives regarding the many adventures of a powerful, virile godhead, can perfectly illustrate how Jupiter in the 10th house may malfunction if sanctioned ethics are not duly examined in the light of consciousness and the higher good. With this placement in the natal chart, we should stay vigilant regarding our personal sense of morality and our particular worldview formed by our social, political, or religious conditioning. A person with Jupiter in the 10th house or Jupiter in association with Saturn or Capricorn may be more prone to adopting a self-righteous attitude or promoting a law derived from his or her own limited social, political, or religious conditioning. A possible sense of rigidity in our view of the world must be brought to consciousness in this case. We should stay aware that the only universal law is the higher good, and identifying practical ways to contribute to the higher good is not easy or immediate. We may be constantly tempted to mark our territory with our ethical convictions, and the risk is to deflate all that does not belong to our region of truth. Jupiter in the 10th house poses a rare opportunity for staying faithful, a Saturnian word, to what is eternally good, rather than what is personally, socially, politically, or religiously advisable within the particular limits of our time and place. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 10th house is, I structure my life based on the higher good, and I stay faithful to what is universally right. Jupiter in the 11th house. With Jupiter placed in the 11th house of the natal chart, we may dissociate from Jupiterian themes to maintain impartiality regarding moral, philosophical, religious, or political convictions in ourselves and others. Jupiter in this position symbolizes a proclivity to observe one's ideological or spiritual mechanisms instead of being absorbed by them. Individuals with this placement normally have a higher chance of exposing themselves to an ideological organization in order to conduct an unbiased investigation without losing themselves or falling into extremes in the process. As the 11th house of the birth chart is also associated with the Uranian cutting energy, an uncomfortable planet in this area may also point to a possible degree of unconscious trauma regarding the archetypal energy represented by that planet. The placement of Jupiter in the 11th house of the birth chart may indicate prenatal or past life traumatic memories of lack, absence of hope, or limitations on regenerative function. If Jupiter is comfortable here, however, faith and hope could be imprinted on the psyche early on during the prenatal phase as a result of the jovial mood of the mother or the supportive and generous vibes coming to her from the people in her life or her surroundings. In either case, Jupiter in the 11th house usually bestows upon the individual the rare ability to understand the abstract codes involved in the creation of belief systems, religion, philosophy, politics, law, or ethics. An 11th house Jupiter may symbolize a spiritual aspiration for occupying ourselves with the belief systems or political views of the collective. This may include challenging any existing religious, ethnic, or cultural dogmas with our special contributions relative to the polarity point of the 5th house. Since Jupiter here operates on a grand scale, there is a higher chance for us to actually get involved in the collective ideology of a community, society, or generation in order to defy or modify it for better or worse. The Dutch Jewish teenage writer Anne Frank, whose diary served as an international reminder of the horrors of the Holocaust, profoundly triggering the emotions of the collective, had a crowded 11th house in her natal chart, including Jupiter in the last degree of Taurus, with its dispositor Venus comfortably located at the top of her chart, the 10th house of legacy and public exposure, forming a grand trine with the social planet Saturn and the collective planet Neptune. With an integrated Jupiter in the 11th house of the birth chart, we may simply have a talent for understanding the unwritten laws governing societies and civilizations, including the fact that the collective mind may at times resist any spark of wisdom that is imparted by the individual mind, and thus an adjustment in attitude would be required here. As the Irish poet and playwright William Butler Yeats, who had this placement in his natal chart, succinctly stated, "Think like a wise man, but communicate in the language of the people." If Jupiter is not well integrated, we may feel alienated from the collective ideology or fall prey to any ideology designed to influence a mass without regard to individual lives. With this placement in the natal chart, we should be conscious of the fact that the collective ideology may be wrong at times, and that the individual conscience, in fact, precedes the collective racial, cultural, and political dogmas. The healthy conscience of a single human being can override the biased ideology of many people who may have been dumbfounded by the glittery promises of a leader who disregards the holiness of the human heart relative to the polarity point of the 5th house, and merely preaches adherence to an idealistic system that is in fact void of humanistic values. Therefore, we need to reorient ourselves to the goodness of the human heart rather than focusing on any idealistic belief system that considers us mere clogs in a machine. Anne Frank, one of many unique individuals who lost their lives due to the collective ideology of their times, described this beautifully. "In spite of everything, I still believe people are good at heart." A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 11th house is, "I believe in the goodness of the human heart and the immeasurable value of every life." Jupiter in the 12th house. With Jupiter placed in the 12th house of the natal chart, we have entered the world blessed with a prenatal memory of the benevolence of existence, an unseen, generous force that inclines us to trust life as is. Jupiter here symbolizes the serenity of spirit, but also perhaps a proclivity to spiritual naivete. It is as if the soul has never truly exited Eden, fallen from God's grace, and tossed on the cold face of earth. Individuals with this placement have an innate ability to comprehend the spiritual dimension of life from an early age. They often display an uncontested openness to metaphysical ideas such as an existence of parallel universes or life after death. Alternatively, they may feel quite at home with the notion of being connected to everyone and everything, as if their umbilical cord with the universe has never been cut, and they are still protected by the gentle waters of the Great Mother's womb. With this placement, there is also a higher chance of directly experiencing grace or tapping into the unseen. As a result, a natural talent for hypnotic induction, mediumship, or past life regression may exist, which may become a vocational pursuit. As the 12th house of the birth chart is associated with Neptune's engulfing energy and the realm of the unconscious, an uncomfortable planet in this area may never register itself on a conscious level, yet it can operate behind the scenes. The dream world in this case will give clues to the nature of the tension contained in the psyche. Alternatively, if Jupiter is not comfortable in this section of the chart, the fetus may have experienced a degree of prenatal anguish. This may be either because of environmental factors such as the mother's physical or psychological state, or as a result of the unresolved ancestral or karmic issues the soul has been assigned to carry into this life. A 12th house Jupiter in the natal chart symbolizes an ideological frame of reference containing insight borrowed from various fields of knowledge and intuitively synthesized in a creative manner rather than beliefs formed through cautious, deductive reasoning, relative to the polarity point of the 6th house. With an integrated Jupiter here, we may be blessed with a natural capacity for interdisciplinary awareness or wisdom carried over from prior lifetimes. An interest in studying consciousness may also exist, or involvement in mind-altering experiences that may open doors to higher perception. We may even become mentors, teachers, or symbols of wisdom for the collective, as the energy of Jupiter in this section of the chart is already connected with the flow of life and our collective dreams. If Jupiter is not well integrated, however, we may find it difficult to operate on the material plane with a dose of escapist behavior. As the psyche is blissfully involved on the higher planes of existence, metaphorically playing among the stars, it may not be able to deal with earthly trivia. Drugs, alcohol, excessive sex, or isolating oneself may be possible ways to numb one's spiritual sensitivity in order to make the mundane existence bearable. Fantasy life may be quite versatile, and it may replace reality or radically influence our perception of it. In this case, it will be healthier for us to find creative outlets for the bliss generated by our imagination instead of simply escaping into it. In fact, quite a number of artists, writers, poets, and inventors have had this placement in their natal charts and have put it to good use. H.G. Wells wrote the celebrated work of science fiction The Time Machine, and Nikola Tesla created technologies no one had ever imagined before. Galileo revolutionized our understanding of the cosmos, and Paul Cézanne paved the way for the birth of Cubism, a style of painting unimaginable to most artists of his time. Individuals with Jupiter in the 12th house of their natal charts have been blessed with a unique vision of life that extends beyond time and space. They are usually open to a variety of perspectives and lack the common ideological prejudices that may limit one's mind or spirit. As such, it is almost as if the cosmos has assigned them a particular moral mission to get a glimpse into the infinite generosity of existence and then spread the good news to the rest of us. A helpful affirmation for individuals with Jupiter in the 12th house is, I am a cosmic messenger who spreads the delightful news. We are unequivocally loved and protected by the Great Mother. Jupiter aspects. Sun. Sun and Jupiter conjunction. With this configuration in the natal chart, grandiosity is the natural expression of the conscious self. Nothing feels impossible to create as the self's borders are quite vast and inclusive. Attraction to the foreign, or dealing with the foreign, comes naturally to us, as our consciousness is expanded through contact with that which is not already a part of our known sphere of knowledge. Alternatively, the father figures or influential mentors in our lives may display these qualities. As is the case with any conjunction, the archetypal energy represented by the sign in which the conjunction takes place plays quite a significant role in modifying this aspect. For example, if the conjunction takes place in a yin sign, water or earth, the energy is normally felt more as an inner sense of spaciousness rather than an external impetus for expansion. Left psychologically unintegrated, this combination may symbolize ideological blind spots, extreme bigotry, or lack of objectivity regarding moral, religious, or political convictions. Sun and Jupiter square aspect. We may find it difficult to adhere to the prescriptions of orthodox religion, politics, or traditional moral systems. As a result, we develop our own definition of what is right or wrong and follow the commands of a personal guide with rules derived from our own unique view of morality. Alternatively, Jupiterian figures such as fathers, mentors, and religious or political figures may have challenged our path of individuation by imposing rules and regulations that could not quite apply to our specific style or aspirations in life. Depending on the signs involved, we may deal with this aspect passively or aggressively. In either case, a lot of internal frustration may be generated until we toughen up and learn to resist the imposed ideology without expecting a reconciliation with those advertising it. Left psychologically unintegrated, this combination may indicate a stubborn defiance of orthodoxy in all its guises, even if such an attitude does not bear fruit. Sun and Jupiter opposition aspect. We may periodically vacillate between the call of conscience and the necessity of staying faithful to ourselves. Alternatively, our conscious self may have been formed by comparing and contrasting ourselves with a Jupiterian figure, such as a teacher, mentor, political leader, or writer we felt inspired by. Their feedback, whether positive or negative in this case, may have played a significant role in our individuation process. Another possibility is that perhaps the prevalent political, religious, or cultural systems of our time have been diametrically opposed to our sense of identity, yet we have had to cope with them to mature. In the absence of psychological integration, we may project our sense of meaning upon external figures such as politicians or religious figures, and then worship them or hate them based on their ideology, political affiliation, or religious outlook. As a result, we may perceive the other as either indispensable or as an obstacle to our path of individuation. There is also a possibility of vacillating between dedication and rejection regarding a Jupiterian figure in our lives. Sun plus Jupiter, quincunx aspect. Our consciousness may operate by excluding a need for meaning. Alternatively, political, religious, or moral systems may be perceived as posing a threat to our individuation process, and as such they may spur us to define our individuation path as a reaction to such systems. As the quincunx energy can be hardly appropriated by the psyche in the first half of life, there is a higher chance for somatic manifestation regarding the archetypes involved. The heart, the back, and the circulatory system may be especially vulnerable, as well as any other body part symbolized by the signs involved in the quincunx. Therefore, vigilance and medical checkups regarding these areas are recommended. Sun plus Jupiter semi-sextile aspect. Our conscious self holds a minimal awareness of Jupiterian principles of expansion, the quest for meaning, and natural law. However, it may not be quite at ease with these energies as it cannot fully grasp them. The result is a grudging coexistence of our conscious self with our particular set of beliefs. If Jupiter is well integrated, the all-encompassing energy of Jupiter can usually pave the way for the expressive energy of the Sun to flow in the direction of individuation rather than conformity. If, however, Jupiter is psychologically unintegrated, the unique solar urge to individuate may be partially troubled by the need to conform to one's own ideological, religious, or cultural conventions. Sun plus Jupiter trine aspect. The development of our conscious self has been encouraged by a mentor or boosted by our cultural or ideological upbringing. Therefore, we may have enjoyed an excellent education, intellectual freedom to explore, or constructive companionship. Even if these conditions have not been present in early life, we can probably enjoy them later in life. Alternatively, an adventure-seeking spirit or daredevil quality may be naturally present in us, which may function as luck in risky situations. Confidence in our individual path may also push us to challenge ourselves on various levels. In this case, challenges will be perceived as fun and ways to build trust in our abilities and not necessarily taken for pragmatic reasons. We may also experience a certain level of ease when others notice us. This can maintain a positive feedback loop in our psyche, encouraging us to take even more risks in life for better or worse. Sun plus Jupiter sextile aspect. Exposure to philosophy, religion, or politics may help the individuation process. The conscious self can benefit from interacting with Jupiterian figures or pursuing Jupiterian endeavors such as traveling, learning foreign concepts, cultural immersion, or political involvement. Alternatively, we may find opportunities throughout life to embody Jupiterian qualities. Despite the fact that this process usually requires an initial effort, we may feel quite supported on this path. Our immediate environment or the circle of family and friends may lend a hand if necessary. However, this will also depend on how seriously we focus on our path. In some cases, this aspect may simply show an appreciation of a Jupiterian endeavor, so our ability to manifest this energy on the material plane will largely depend on other factors in the chart, including a general predisposition to take action instead of resting in contemplation. Jupiter aspects, the moon. Moon plus Jupiter conjunction aspect. The moon represents the subjective image one has of oneself. In evolutionary astrology, one's ego is represented by the moon, in contrast to one's creative impetus is self-actualized, which is symbolized by the sun. Therefore, this configuration may symbolize that our personal beliefs or ideological orientation may be essential to our ego structure or sense of grounding in the world. Alternatively, the mother or nurturing figure may have displayed Jupiterian qualities such as a desire to expand her worldview through traveling or mingling with other cultures, and adherence to a religion or certain ideological system, a high degree of optimism, in some cases a Pollyanna figure, or simply a constant desire to learn new concepts. As is the case with any conjunction, the archetypal energy represented by the sign in which the conjunction takes place plays a significant role in modifying this aspect. For example, if the conjunction takes place in a yang sign, fire and air, the energy is normally registered more emphatically on the spiritual and mental planes rather than the emotional or physical body, and as such may not manifest in ways commonly described by traditional astrology, i.e. a big appetite or a propensity to gain weight. Less psychologically unintegrated, this combination may symbolize an inability to recognize different aspects of personality in order to form a self-image that contains all and not only chosen parts of us. A lack of flexibility regarding our self-image may also make us stubborn or stuck in constant self-glorification. Moon plus Jupiter square aspect. We may find it difficult to follow the exciting path of adventure out of fear of losing our safe grounds, parental or societal criticism, or because of our own ego requirements. Alternatively, our political, religious, or cultural beliefs may not be approved by our immediate family members or those with whom we have established emotional ties. In some cases, our approach to life may be fully rejected by our nearest and dearest. Therefore, we may develop a degree of emotional inaccessibility over time regarding our way of thinking or being. However, if this energy is successfully integrated, we gradually learn not to need the ideological approval of others in order to maintain healthy emotional ties with them. Alternatively, Jupiterian figures such as fathers or mentors, or simply the religious, political, or cultural context in which we live may have challenged our sense of safety in the world. If possible, leaving the culture or country of origin and residing in another place may alleviate anxiety stemming from such experiences. Less psychologically unintegrated, this combination may symbolize a degree of emotional extremism. We may try too hard to gain external approval regarding our ideological convictions, or we may experience a high degree of frustration due to emotional vulnerabilities interfering with our intellectual or ideological pursuits in life. Moon plus Jupiter opposition aspect. We may periodically vacillate between our conscience and ego needs. Alternatively, the ego structure may have been formed as a result of comparing and contrasting ourselves with a father, teacher, or mentor figure. Their input may have played a significant role in our sense of safety in the world, for better or worse. Another possibility is that we may have perceived the political, religious, or cultural context in which we operate as a necessary force in the formation of our security needs, and yet in conflict with our sense of identity. Moving away from home and settling abroad, yet carrying our home's language, lifestyle, or culture, may partially alleviate this tension. Less psychologically unintegrated, we may need to be approved or opposed by others in order to feel emotionally grounded in life. There is also a possibility of vacillating between extremes of self-righteousness and self-abasement, or we may tend to dismiss our emotional vulnerabilities to maintain an invulnerable, cheerful facade. Moon plus Jupiter quincunx aspect. Our ego structure may be formed as an extreme reaction to a need for meaning. Alternatively, certain political, religious, or cultural systems may be perceived as threatening our sense of safety in the world. As such, they may be sneered at or emotionally dissociated from. As the energy represented by this aspect in most cases cannot be appropriated by the psyche, there is a higher chance for somatic manifestation regarding the archetypes involved. The breast and the womb, the stomach, the eyes, and the lymphatic system may be especially vulnerable, as well as any other body part symbolized by the signs involved in the quincunx. Therefore, vigilance and medical checkups regarding these areas are recommended. Moon plus Jupiter semi-sextile aspect. Our ego holds a minimal awareness of the Jupiterian themes of expansion and a quest for meaning. However, it may not be at ease with such an awareness as it cannot totalize these energies. If the moon is well integrated, this aspect may not necessarily pose challenges, as the receptive energy of the moon usually invites the Jupiterian function to be at the service of the ego rather than separate from it. Nevertheless, if the lunar functions are not psychologically integrated, our sense of safety may subconsciously write off our desire for expansion or adventure in life. Moon plus Jupiter trine aspect. Our ego has been nurtured by a particular Jupiterian figure such as a father, an uncle, or a teacher, or by our ideological upbringing. Therefore, we may have received approval regarding our personal needs or been prompted to be self-encouraging for better or worse. It is imperative to remember that the moon and Jupiter are not compatible energies. One signifies our limited self-referential experience of life, whereas the other symbolizes a cosmic call that invites us to venture beyond our safe walls and experience new things in life. Therefore, a harmonious energy flow between the moon and Jupiter may not always be linked to a positive self-image. It may at times symbolize an ideologically saturated self-image or a sense of safety that is strictly related to our beliefs or intellectual capacities, rather than a connection with our true self or divine core. Depending on other aspects of the moon and Jupiter, we may innately feel at ease with the idea of experimenting and expanding our known horizons. Or in contrast, we may become so subjectively immersed in our own belief system or ethical principles that we cannot maintain a sense of identity outside of those beliefs and principles. If this energy is brought to consciousness and utilized in a constructive manner, it can represent our ability to maintain a healthy level of self-confidence through faith in ourselves and the unlimited generosity of the universe. Moon and Jupiter sextile aspect. Exposure to philosophy, religion, or politics may help us feel emotionally anchored. Jupiterian endeavors such as traveling, learning foreign concepts, cultural immersion, or political activities are usually approved by our ego, or they simply do not interfere with our sense of safety in the world. Alternatively, we may have received ideological or intellectual training from family members or been exposed to scholastic opportunities early in life. Our environment could have played a supportive role in the formation of our self-image or simply provided us with the necessary means of learning and expanding our horizons. There was a library next door, for example, or there was a neighbor or aunt who would take us to the zoo to teach us about animals. If this energy is directed correctly, it can represent opportunities for emotional grounding through learning about ourselves and our emotional mechanisms. In this case, we can develop flexibility regarding our safety needs, which may be different from our need to expand and grow. Understanding this difference can help us avoid frustration in the process of building a self-image that contains all and not just selected parts of our character. Jupiter aspects. Mercury. Mercury plus Jupiter conjunction aspect. Mercury represents our cognitive ability, our style of thinking and communicating, and our capacity to adapt to various circumstances. Therefore, this configuration may symbolize that our cognitive process is merged with our ideological orientation. In other words, our thinking already takes place within a system, be it philosophical, religious, cultural, or political. Alternatively, our mode of analyzing information may be based on prioritizing the context over the data within that context. Therefore, we may miss the trees for the forest, or we may perfectly understand the conditions implied in a problem, but not the problem itself. Some individuals with this configuration in their chart tend to naturally think outside the box. They may display an above-average ability to find creative solutions to complicated problems. They may be quite curious about other people's convictions, or they may simply enjoy experimenting with a variety of communication techniques or gaining new skills, no matter how old they may be. Others may find it difficult to focus on any given task, especially during school years, simply because their thoughts tend to fly toward more exciting horizons instead of sitting in the cage of concentration. Interdisciplinary studies will be a wonderful option for these people, as they can use their natural tendency to drift away in order to research scattered information from a variety of unrelated fields and then synthesize them all to create a meaningful system. This combination may also signify a high level of dexterity. It may also mean a special facility for expressing oneself through pantomime or imitating others' accents or gestures with accuracy. Some individuals with this configuration can prove to be very successful in professions involving language in a playful manner. This includes impromptu speaking or verbally interacting with others on a large scale. In some cases, however, children with this configuration in their natal charts may be unjustly labeled as having a learning disability, since in most traditional schooling systems, maintaining focus on a dull task is more important than the ability to synthesize information from various spheres of knowledge. Artistic and creative outlets, or even homeschooling with an understanding parent, may be an effective alternative in this case. Mercury plus Jupiter square aspect. Individuals with this configuration may find it difficult to align their personal thinking style with the dominant ideology of their time and place. Critical thinking may come quite naturally to these individuals, but in fact, they may not be able to see all the factors involved in a situation. In some cases, they may find it difficult to ignore ideological or religious trends, and they may feel the urge to take a stance, for better or worse. Alternatively, Jupiterian figures such as fathers or mentors or our religious, political, or cultural context may have challenged our style of thinking or interfered with our ability to correctly evaluate our immediate environment. Our relationship with the foreign may also be challenging at times. However, in most cases, such challenges will be necessary for our cognitive maturation. They may actually help us develop a more open-minded approach to life in the long run. Another possibility is that a sibling, a childhood friend, or someone in our immediate environment displayed Jupiterian qualities which probably came across as excessive, dogmatic, or self-righteous. In this case, we may have found ourselves at odds with this figure or ideologically and intellectually overwhelmed by them. Alternatively, a sibling's particular challenges or tragedies may have directly affected our philosophy of life, religious attitude, or ideological orientation, for better or worse. Mercury plus Jupiter opposition aspect. We may periodically vacillate between absolute adherence to established rules and our personal interpretation of those rules. Alternatively, our cognitive capacities may have been developed through interaction with a teacher or mentor figure, or early exposure to foreign concepts. The interaction, whether positive or negative in this case, may have played a significant role in our intellectual development. Another possibility is that we may have found a certain political, religious, intellectual, or cultural system diametrically opposed to our personal style of perception and yet impossible to ignore, as it was present in our early environment, either on an abstract level, through books, for example, or in the form of a friend or family member. In some cases, this polarity signifies a mental attraction toward the Jupiterian themes, such as philosophy, theology, or foreign concepts or people. We can become enormously inspired by the other, or, in turn, provide inspiration to the other. Interaction with Jupiterian figures or a fascination with foreign systems of thinking or communicating may comprise a large part of our intellectual life or legacy in this case. Mercury plus Jupiter quincunx aspect. Our cognitive style may have been formed by dismissing a search for meaning. Alternatively, political, religious, or moral systems may be held in contempt or perceived as threats to our sovereignty of thinking. As such, they may spur us to pursue an intellectual life that is, more than anything, a reaction to such systems. As the quincunx energy in most cases cannot be appropriated by the psyche, there is a higher chance for somatic manifestation regarding the archetypes involved. The lungs, the hands and shoulders, the tongue, and the nervous system may be especially vulnerable, as well as any other body part symbolized by the signs involved in the quincunx. Therefore, vigilance and medical checkups regarding these areas are recommended. Mercury plus Jupiter semi-sextile aspect. Our cognitive space holds a minimal awareness of the Jupiterian principles of expansion, the quest for meaning, and the natural law. However, it may not be comfortable with this awareness as it cannot understand these energies properly. If Mercury is well integrated, it can enhance the objectivity of the thought process, making it less subjective and more precise. If, however, the Mercury functions, such as the ability to analyze an issue based on the present facts rather than mere assumptions, or the ability to communicate one's ideas through language, are underdeveloped or overdeveloped, this aspect may indicate that the logical mind is either seldom used or excessively used regarding one's ideological or religious convictions. Mercury plus Jupiter trine aspect. Our cognitive development is usually encouraged by a mentor or by our expansive cultural or ideological upbringing. We may also have an intellectual facility for understanding a wide array of different topics. The mind is quick to absorb new information and open to what may seem challenging or foreign. Alternatively, we may come to the world with certain mental agility, which, if registered consciously and utilized constructively, can help us improve our undesirable conditions or predispositions in life through sheer intelligence and adaptability. There may also exist a certain level of ease with regard to operating within the larger political, cultural, or religious context, for better or worse. The positive side would be a natural harmony between our style of thinking and the ideological framework of our time and place. The negative side would be a possible absence of critical thinking that requires a minimal degree of friction between our personal views and the dominant cultural, religious, or moral system within which we operate. In this case, we may indisputably dedicate our lives to certain ideological or philosophical doctrines, unable to see the possible shortcomings of those doctrines. In some cases, this configuration may show that we are not conscious of our status as a cog in a machine. As such, we tend to overlook the importance of evaluating our environment correctly. This may, in turn, cause issues regarding how we are perceived within a larger context of our time. Failure to see our limited place within our culture, society, or time may allow us to go beyond our limits, yet may also make us cross the religious confines of our context, similar to the mythological Icarus. As such, an individual may simply be discarded to maintain the integrity of the system rather than appreciated as an agent of change within that system. Mercury plus Jupiter sextile aspect. Early exposure to philosophy, religion, politics, or foreign cultures may have assisted our cognitive development. Our intellect has probably benefited from interacting with Jupiterian figures or pursuing Jupiterian endeavors, such as traveling, learning foreign concepts, cultural immersion, or political involvement. Alternatively, we may find opportunities throughout life to communicate our personal views about Jupiterian themes, such as philosophy, religion, politics, ethics, culture, or social issues. Quite a number of journalists, writers, and teachers whose daily life is filled with Jupiterian topics have this configuration in their natal charts. In some cases, this aspect may show that we have the ability to objectively analyze our own belief system. Therefore, we may be less prone to be sentimentally influenced by the ideological context within which we operate. Alternatively, analytical thinking may be happily married to an intuitive understanding of the wider system within which smaller concepts are formed. Therefore, we may naturally grasp various linguistic systems such as foreign languages, programming languages, and the like. Jupiter aspects. Venus. Venus plus Jupiter conjunction aspect. Venus represents our ability to attract, our relating style, and what we value in life. Therefore, this configuration usually symbolizes generosity of spirit, a general aura of friendliness and sociability, and the priority of experience over possession. This can be significantly modified, though, if the conjunction takes place in an earth sign. Alternatively, our mode of relating may be directly connected to our style of understanding life. If Venus and Jupiter are comfortable in the chart, we will see other people as potential allies and normally treat them with kindness and openness. If, however, this conjunction is under stress in the chart, our ideological biases may very well affect our choice of friends or partners. Only those whose basic life philosophies we approve of can enter the circle of our friends or lovers. The rest of the world in this case can be automatically dismissed as worthless of our attention. Some individuals with this configuration in their natal charts tend to naturally fall in love with foreign lands or foreign people. They are highly attracted to the exotic, be it a country, an experience, or a person. They usually appreciate foreign customs, rituals, languages, or lifestyles. They may also be quite open to other religions, philosophies, or spiritual doctrines, or they may simply stay fascinated with these issues throughout their life, especially if this conjunction takes place in an air sign. Others may find it difficult to focus on one relationship at a time, as they often need intellectual stimulation or a spirit of adventure as a steady ingredient in their relationships. This by no means affects their capacity to commit, as commitment is generally a Saturnian issue, but it does mean that they tend not to maintain tedious relationships or unstimulating friendships for long. It is crucial for an individual with this configuration in his or her natal chart to grow in a relationship or gain something from a friendship or association. The idea of being with people just because they are sexy, rich, or socially influential is usually insufficient. The relationship should have an ideological or philosophical dimension, an element of hope, and a trajectory that points people to a shared future. In some cases, this combination signifies a high level of idealism regarding partnership or marriage. Expectations directed at a potential partner may be difficult to fulfill. However, if Venus and Jupiter are well integrated, the individual may actually find meaning in life or spiritually grow through forming a partnership or marriage. Alternatively, the partner may display Jupiterian qualities such as being a foreigner, a teacher or mentor, adventurous, spiritual, educated, coming from an affluent background, being extravagant, Epicurean, or generous to a fault, or they may simply have a relaxed or, in the worst case scenario, irresponsible view of life. Venus plus Jupiter square aspect. We may find it difficult to align our personal philosophy, ideological orientation, or sense of morality with what we actually find attractive or desirable. This usually results in a sense of guilt about indulgence or pleasure, which in turn may trigger an impulsive attraction toward taboos or modes of behavior that are socially, religiously, or culturally prohibited. Alternatively, Jupiterian figures such as fathers or mentors may have challenged our basic survival-related needs in life. For example, if our father spent all his money on his extravagant habits, drugs, alcohol, gambling, etc., he could jeopardize our well-being by not providing food, clothes, or shelter for us as children. In this case, scarcity could become a constant theme in our psyche, triggering a premature need to provide for ourselves without counting on our father. As we grow into adults, we may feel anxious about the possibility of falling back into scarcity or depending on others to satisfy our basic needs. This, in turn, may become a relationship pattern. We may seem to constantly attract partners who are not capable of meeting our basic needs, but in fact, we perpetuate this pattern by believing, Jupiter, that we cannot count on others for satisfying our needs, Venus. Becoming aware of our role in shaping our relationships is the key to changing this pattern. In some cases, individuals with this configuration in their natal charts expect a potential partner to compensate for the scarcity brought on by them by a parental figure or ideological upbringing. Therefore, they put themselves back in the position of the needy child, whose needs have to be met without compromise. Reminding ourselves that we are not vulnerable anymore, that we can now perfectly take care of our needs, and that our partners are not supposed to compensate for our parental dysfunction or malformed beliefs can help us change this pattern and attract mature relationships based on healthy give and take, which would ultimately be more satisfying for both parties. Venus plus Jupiter opposition aspect. We may periodically vacillate between extremes of optimism and pessimism regarding our relationships, social ties, or ability to provide for ourselves. At times, this type of ideological mood swing may adversely affect our circle of friends and lovers. This is simply because they cannot be sure where they stand in relation to us or what they actually need to do to help us. As Venusian energy is also connected to the material plane, we may become generous to a fault or expect unrealistic generosity from others. Showering others with expensive gifts and then getting offended why they do not return the favor is not unusual for individuals with this configuration in their natal charts. Trying to socially please others and then feeling disappointed or betrayed when they do not do the same is also possible if these archetypal energies have not been properly integrated. One of the most critical evolutionary lessons for individuals with this opposition in their natal charts is learning the art of balancing needs with expectations. Needs are simple and limited, where expectations can be quite complicated and infinite. The key here is to prioritize our needs over our expectations and not to waste precious psychological energy in the form of disappointment every time an expectation is not fulfilled. Recognizing that our basic needs are not and should not be complicated can help us avoid frustration and refocus on what is truly meaningful in life. Venus plus Jupiter quincunx aspect. Our style of attracting or relating may have been formed by blocking the need for expansion, adventure, or meaning in life. Love and abundance may be perceived as utterly incompatible, i.e., attaining happiness may entail the sacrifice of one's desire or loss on some level, similar to the image of a virgin, Venus, who has to be sacrificed to the gods, Jupiter, in order to keep them functioning. Alternatively, we may philosophize, analyze, or obsess over our desires without actually aiming at fulfilling them, as the desires, especially of a carnal nature, may be held in contempt or perceived as pathetic by our ideological upbringing or cultural mores. In some cases, we may actually use our desires to test ourselves. This is succinctly reflected in a quote by Hermann Hesse, the German novelist who had this placement in his chart. "Love isn't there to make us happy. I believe it exists to show us how much we can endure." As the energy represented by a quincunx in most cases cannot be appropriated by the psyche, there is a higher chance for somatic manifestation regarding the archetypes involved. The kidneys, reproductive organs, and the neck may be especially vulnerable, as well as any other body part symbolized by the signs involved in the quincunx. Therefore, vigilance and medical checkups regarding these areas are recommended. Venus plus Jupiter semi-sextile aspect. Our survival needs have been partitioned off from our desire for expansion, meaning, or experimenting with life. The result is a gap between the sphere of necessary and the sphere of ideal. If Venus is well integrated, this aspect can symbolize a flair for provocative, unusual, and creative forms of artistic or creative expression. If, however, the Venusian functions, such as the ability to compromise, negotiate, or relate on equal terms, are underdeveloped or overdeveloped, this aspect may symbolize that a pre-existing condition regarding Venusian functions is exasperated in the psyche, or that a particular desire may simply fail to manifest properly in the outside world. Venus plus Jupiter trine aspect. Most of our survival needs were met at the early stage of life, which probably created space for kindness and generosity in us. Alternatively, we may understand relationships as gifts rather than necessities. Friends and lovers are there not because we need them, we are special, or we deserve them, but because we have been blessed by the benevolence of the universe. There may also exist a tendency to see goodness in others and relate to them through their positive qualities, instead of projecting negativity onto them, as is the case with difficult Saturn-Venus contacts, or looking for our own missing pieces in them, as is the case with difficult Neptune-Venus contacts. In some cases, this placement may hint at the possibility of gaining material profit through utilizing our natural talents, especially artistic and creative aptitudes. We may also be attracted to diplomacy, peaceful negotiations, leading to win-win situations, foreign people, cultures, languages, and cuisines. If this configuration is stressed by other factors in the chart, the individual may indulge in hedonistic behavior. This, without a strong Saturn or Sun, may become a prevalent characteristic or even a lifestyle. Venus plus Jupiter sextile aspect. Early exposure to philosophy, religion, foreign languages, or diverse cultures may have helped us establish inner security. Our childhood friends, classmates, siblings, relatives, or environment may have had a positive effect on our self-esteem, or helped us understand how to relate to others on friendly terms. We may also find opportunities throughout life to relate to others in an objective or an accepting manner, forming valuable and meaningful friendships. Opportunities for artistic and creative expression may also arise, which may in turn facilitate our spiritual or ideological development. In some cases, this aspect may simply show that we have an appreciation for the arts and beauty. It may also show a well-developed capacity for enjoying idyllic aspects of life. Alternatively, relationships may help us gain a better understanding of the bigger picture, the philosophical or spiritual systems at work, or simply our place in the cosmos. Romantic partners or friends may introduce us to various philosophical or ideological views. They may act as teachers or mentors who help us mature ideologically or spiritually. Jupiter aspects. Mars. Mars plus Jupiter conjunction aspect. Mars represents our motivation, action style, and how our soul carries out our evolutionary impulses in this life. As a consequence, this configuration usually represents our readiness to act following our ideological disposition, i.e., becoming the crusader of our own beliefs. Depending on the sign in which this configuration takes place, the energy of Mars will be guided based on a particular mission statement. In fire signs, this conjunction usually symbolizes our soul's urge to initiate an ideology, or to impose our ideological convention on others. In air signs, the soul usually wants to communicate about ideology, or to push the collective ideological boundaries as much as possible. In water signs, we constantly challenge our emotional and receptive capacity in order to develop even more emotional depth, and in earth signs, our energy is largely dedicated to consolidating our place in the world through our ideological achievements. Alternatively, our mode of self-assertion will always be imbued with our style of understanding life. If Mars and Jupiter are relatively comfortable in the chart, we may simply act based on what we know to be true or correct. If, however, this conjunction is under stress, our ideological biases may taint our actions or decisions. We may act prematurely based on our convictions instead of analyzing the circumstances or considering other points of view before launching an action. Some individuals with this configuration in their natal charts tend to be naturally enthusiastic about fresh ideas, social or ideological movements, or the possibility of revolution in any field. Political involvement is quite common with this natal configuration. As Mars seeks to advertise his urges on the expansive ground of Jupiter, a large part of one's ideology tends to manifest as activism. In some cases, this combination symbolizes a high level of energy regarding intellectual or philosophical pursuits, which can lead to academic and professional recognition. However, if these archetypes are not well integrated, we may become obsessed with a certain intellectual or philosophical system to the point of falling into a self-made ideological trap, rendering ourselves incapable of understanding anything outside of what we already believe in. Mars plus Jupiter square aspect. We may find it difficult to align our will with our philosophy or the dominant moral, political, or religious demands of the time. Alternatively, our sexual urges may be in direct conflict with our chosen ideology, religion, or belief system. For instance, a priest who finds out he is homosexual, or a doctor who is recruited and sent to war to kill others will both experience an archetypal conflict between the energies of the broader system, Jupiter, and the personal path each is supposed to walk on, Mars. In some cases, Jupiterian figures such as parents or mentors may have challenged our freedom to act. For example, a parent may have used moral lectures to stop us from pursuing what we truly desire. This may be a hobby, a friendship, or a sexual adventure. If this configuration is under further stress in the natal chart, any time we make a choice based on our free will, friction may arise. What is right for us may not be appropriate for the social, cultural, racial, religious, or spiritual system in which we operate. Therefore, our freedom to act, which is the natural right of every human being, may be constantly curbed by ideological fabricated standards imposed by our society, culture, or community. It is also equally possible that we undermine our own initiatives simply because of guilt generated by ethical or moral dictums that we believe in or truly respect. In either case, the conflict between nature, Mars, and culture, Jupiter, may very well comprise a large part of our living experience. Reminding ourselves that we are not necessarily bound by systems, no matter how they may influence our mode of operation, is the key to working with this conflicting energy. The French philosopher and writer Michel Foucault had this configuration in his natal chart, and he dedicated quite a few years of his life to the exploration of the relationship between the individual, Mars, and the various systems in which the individual has to operate, Jupiter. The Mars/Jupiter interaction is succinctly reflected in one of his quotes. "Knowledge is not made for understanding, it is made for cutting." With this natal aspect, we should learn how to use knowledge to act rather than let knowledge curb our impetus to take action. We can probably act more autonomously when our will is challenged by various factors, simply because to gain a sense of our power, we will need some sort of resistance, and Jupiter skirting Mars will symbolically provide a Colosseum-like space for us, where we can exercise our free will muscles under the condemning yet encouraging gaze of many spectators. Mars plus Jupiter opposition aspect. We may periodically vacillate between an urge for autonomous action and an impetus to yield to what the bigger context deems as correct. In some cases, we may simply choose one side of this equation and project the other side onto the outside world. If we exclusively identify with Mars, the outside world may be perceived as a huge force opposing our reality, keeping us at bay by passing moral judgments on us or accusing us of things we have never done. On the other hand, if we identify with Jupiter, others will appear rash or immature to us, only seeking to gratify their most basic desires, and devoid of sophistication, morality, or integrity. As Mars also represents sexual impulses, we may also indulge in sexual encounters as a way of having fun or to keep ourselves happy. Trying to accommodate others' sexual whims is another possible scenario. One of the most profound evolutionary lessons for individuals with this configuration in their natal charts is to learn how to balance their ideas with their actions, abstract beliefs with primal needs, and contextual realities with an unfettered urge to stay true to themselves. We can enjoy sex and simultaneously stick to our morals. We can lead a spiritual life and learn how to express anger in a healthy fashion. We can pray in solitude and chase prey when necessary. As with any opposition, we can always play on both sides rather than either. Mars plus Jupiter, quincunx aspect. Our basic mode of assertion or existence may be formed by excluding contextual definitions or systematic beliefs. We may perceive our self-originating impulses as utterly outside of the field of awareness defined by the ideological, religious, racial, or cultural context in which we live. An example would be the case of an intersex person born in a society that does not have a word to define this condition, rendering the reality of such an individual undefined or non-existent. Depending on the level of control either of these archetypes, Mars or Jupiter, exerts in our psyche, we may decide to let go of our reality or our primal urges in favor of a more sophisticated, fabricated, respected, etc. lifestyle, or we may do quite the opposite and establish our uncensored truth even at a hefty price. In some cases, as Jupiter, the moral compass or ethical decrees, is frowning upon Mars, base needs or natural compulsions, an extreme reaction may be formed in the psyche of the individual, seeking to overthrow Jupiter altogether. Feeling anger or frustration toward God or gods, religious figures, or ideological symbols at one point in life is not uncommon with this configuration in the natal chart. Alternatively, on a more abstract level, action, Mars, and ideology, Jupiter, may be perceived as incompatible. As the English novelist and playwright John Galsworthy, who had this aspect in his natal chart, stated, "A man of action, forced into a state of thought, is unhappy until he can get out of it." From time to time, we may also use the suppression or exaggeration of primal urges as a means of spiritual purification or self-punishment. A general tendency to underdo or overdo may also exist, which is gradually replaced by a desire to balance different aspects of life. As the energy represented by a quincunx in most cases cannot be appropriated by the psyche, there is a higher chance for somatic manifestation regarding the archetypes involved. The head, the brain, and the muscles may be especially vulnerable, as well as any other body part symbolized by the signs involved in the quincunx. Therefore, vigilance and medical checkups regarding these areas are recommended. Mars plus Jupiter semi-sextile aspect. Our need to stay true to ourselves is severed from our impetus for expansion, meaning, or experimenting with life. The result is a gap between what is honest and what is exciting. If Mars and Jupiter are well integrated, this aspect can symbolize a tendency to expand one's immediate sphere of operation through instinct. As such, the masculine and feminine polarities of the psyche instinctively collaborate to produce an informed mode of action. If, however, Martian functions, such as the ability to initiate or assert, are underdeveloped or overdeveloped, this aspect may signify that a pre-existing condition regarding these functions is exasperated. A degree of frustration may also exist when a choice has to be made between what we have to do and what is right to do. Mars plus Jupiter trine aspect. We usually enjoy an abundance of energy or a minimum degree of clarity regarding what we have to do at any given moment in life. Our natural belief is that actions speak louder than words, so we tend to merely act rather than ponder the reasons behind our actions or ask advice or guidance before executing them. With this configuration of the natal chart, one's being aligns with one's beliefs. Such individuals can be refreshingly honest about their beliefs and usually cannot hide their true motives. The pursuit of wisdom comes naturally in most cases, and the individual may even become a practicing symbol of an ideology. If this configuration is stressed in the chart, we may tend to believe that those who do not act are not to be heeded or respected. We may also feel frustrated at how slow everyone else is, or what a tragic lack of vision everyone else has in comparison. As our life philosophy is naturally activist, we may not understand why others have to question their desires or hesitate before making decisions in life. In its most optimal form, this configuration beautifully links our instincts with our natural good-heartedness. Therefore, we can be optimistic about our potential or show generosity to others without self-serving calculations. Positive karma can be generated by following karma yoga, i.e. yoga of action, which is doing things for the benefit of others rather than ourselves. Mars plus Jupiter sextile aspect. Exposure to philosophy, religion, foreign languages, or diverse cultures may have been an immediate experience in our lives. Alternatively, our childhood friends, classmates, siblings, relatives, or environment may have encouraged us to act confidently or assert ourselves unapologetically. An individual with this configuration in the natal chart may also find opportunities throughout life to act based on an objective analysis of circumstances. Opportunities for unfettered actions may equally arise for better or worse. If the archetypal energies of Mars and Jupiter are well integrated, action will be the most effective form of wisdom. Otherwise, our ideology may simply justify our actions. In some cases, this aspect may show that we are witty about sex, or like to discuss it, write about it, or objectively analyze it. A sense of lightheartedness or childlike curiosity may also be present regarding sexual encounters. The exotic may turn us on, and we may be open to sexual experimentation and exploration. However, if Mars and Jupiter are stressed in the chart, the experimental spirit may turn into an obsession with diversity. We may need constant variety to feel sexually satisfied. Jupiter aspects. Saturn. Jupiter plus Saturn conjunction aspect. Saturn symbolizes our psychological flair for structuring our conscious life and experience. This energy shows how we define our world and where we are in the great chain of being. Also, it illustrates what our main task is in the limited amount of time and space we have on this planet. A well-functioning Saturn facilitates a full grasp of our limits and encourages dedication to overcoming those limits, not for glory but for practicality. Furthermore, the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter signifies that we tend to interpret all suffering as meaningful, firmly believing that our efforts will be rewarded in this lifetime or the next. Depending on the sign in which this configuration takes place, the expansive energy of Jupiter will be guided based on the realistic requirements of Saturn. In fire signs, this conjunction usually symbolizes a lifelong promise to be inspiring, innovative, and action-oriented. In air signs, the goal is to achieve excellence in interaction with the world and its people, or to be the best in one's chosen field of study. In water signs, one is to pursue mastery over the world of emotion and imagination. And in earth signs, one would seek meaning in building long-lasting structures, legacies that would outlive one's days on earth. If Saturn and Jupiter are comfortable in the chart, we tend to be in sync with our environment and with cultural or political shifts in our society. We may also enjoy the right effort-reward ratio regarding our plans and endeavors. Additionally, we may encounter the right teachers or mentors who will eventually help us on our path to worldly success. However, if this conjunction is not well integrated, it may be challenging to find meaning in hardships. We may struggle through periods of nihilistic thinking, followed by bursts of compensatory optimism. As we mature, though, we may adopt a more evolved version of nihilism without reverting to compensatory mechanisms. We may eventually understand that even if life has no intrinsic meaning whatsoever, it is still to be lived, cherished, and enjoyed precisely as it is, moment by moment, with all its sweetness and sorrows. Jupiter plus Saturn square aspect. We may find it challenging to align our philosophy with our conscious experience of the world, societal standards, or our place in the hierarchy of our family or tribe. We may also be criticized for our convictions, or a sense of guilt may interfere with our commitments. In some cases, Saturnian figures such as parents, progenitors, or authority figures may have challenged our beliefs or pushed us to pursue a life path that does not match our potential for growth or spiritual makeup. For example, bosses may decline our requests for promotion simply because they do not like our ideas, rendering our efforts useless. In this case, we may feel underappreciated or misunderstood despite all our talents. If this configuration is under further stress in the natal chart by being part of an unintegrated T-square, for example, we may feel stuck professionally or ideologically up until our first Saturn return around the age of 29. If, however, we have a strong impetus to grow despite the harsh circumstances, this combination can symbolize a high degree of psychological stamina in the face of all opposing forces originating from our family or society, or our inner critical voices exasperating our insecurities. If the energies represented by this square are well integrated, we become less sensitive to rejection from authority figures, family, or society as we age, and we focus on pursuing a meaningful vocation that aligns with our ideology or spiritual practices. With this configuration in the natal chart, success cannot be built on flimsy ground. Jupiter and Saturn often symbolize strengthening the spirit over time, which is necessary when building long-lasting legacies. Jupiter plus Saturn opposition aspect. We may periodically vacillate between a desire for expansion and an inner decree to conserve our energies. Alternatively, we may experience a period of constant awareness of our limits followed by a period of feeling that the sky is the limit. The craving to break away from one's limits may also be followed by a wish to retain those very limits in order not to be overwhelmed by absolute freedom of choice. This endless process of alternating between the consciousness of limits and the psychological flight into limitlessness has been exquisitely depicted in the poem Renaissance by the American poet and playwright Edna St. Vincent Millay, who had this configuration in her natal chart. After the visionary persona of the poem understands her spatial and temporal limits, she wishes for an infinite view of existence. Yet after moving through many turbulent experiences happening beyond the scope of her time and place, she feels overwhelmed and wishes to put an end to her omniscient sensation of feeling pity like the pity of God. After her wish is heard and she is granted the solace of the grave, however, she becomes dissatisfied again, yearning to be back to the limited world of nature. Similarly, we may fluctuate between staying within our limits and building something small, or escaping into a visionary world, fired by lofty ideas or grand schemes that are often beyond reach. One of the most critical evolutionary lessons for individuals with this configuration in their natal charts is to learn how to align their vision with reality. This is to construct a reality that includes their vision without excluding practicality. The projection of inner limits onto the outside world is also possible if this configuration remains unintegrated. The key here is to repossess each pole of the opposition, which we might have disowned earlier in life, the Jupiterian vision or the Saturnian limits, and recognize that pole as ours rather than external to us. As Millet's poem brilliantly concludes, the heart can push the sea and land farther away on either hand. The soul can split the sky in two and let the face of God shine through, but east and west will pinch the heart that cannot keep them pushed apart, and he whose soul is flat, the sky will cave in on him by and by. Jupiter plus Saturn, quincunx aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, the growth and decay cycles may seem out of sync. We may feel that we cannot quite reach a moment in life where all is perfect. This, however, usually serves as an impetus to keep growing, especially in intellectual or ideological endeavors. Many individuals with this configuration in their birth charts have achieved pinnacles of success or recognition, as sometimes a constant degree of dissatisfaction and a perfectionist attitude are necessary for success. Others may have felt that their viewpoints have not been heard, therefore they may have developed a subtle resentment toward tradition, societal standards, or even the notion of success. In some cases, we may even be pushed toward complying with all the rules and regulations to succeed, and we may indeed seem to be doing so, while we may be simultaneously sabotaging our efforts to reconfirm that we would never fit in. As we become more mature, we may be able to incorporate a few benign rules into our nonconformist belief structure to socially or professionally function in a productive manner. The success of this process depends on how conscious we are of our self-sabotaging tendencies regarding achievement or recognition. If these archetypal energies are well integrated, there will be a shift from resentment to competitiveness, which can perfectly pave the way for worldly success. Jupiter plus Saturn, semi-sextile aspect. Our expansive tendencies may be initially blocked off by our conscious experience of life. We may find it difficult to adjust our philosophy to our desire for expansion, or we may feel that happiness is within our reach but impossible to attain, in the same way that a lottery ticket may have all the winning numbers but not in the correct order. If Jupiter is ahead of Saturn in the natural zodiacal sequence and these energies are well integrated, this aspect can symbolize a new evolutionary quest for meaning. Perhaps what our ancestors used to believe or practice does not quite meet our spiritual needs, and we now prefer to initiate our personal exploration of tradition and ideology in this lifetime. If Saturn is ahead of Jupiter in the natural zodiacal sequence, however, one may be symbolically approaching the end of an evolutionary cycle regarding tradition and ideology. In this case, a psychological adherence to what has been handed down from the past may be emphasized. In either case, with this configuration in the natal chart, we are prone to shifts in our ideology as we grow older. What once was meaningful in life may be rendered meaningless later, or we may discover fresh meaning in places that used to be blind spots in our sphere of consciousness when we were younger. Jupiter plus Saturn trine aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, reality structured based on our consciousness is in harmony with the higher aspirations of the soul. This is true for our religious or ideological tendencies or life philosophy, for better or worse. This configuration facilitates the passage from knowledge to wisdom, i.e., what one knows intellectually often paves the way for what one achieves spiritually. Lightheartedness and playfulness in one's outlook on life may also help balance the more challenging aspects of one's personality. Depending on the context of our lives or the circumstances surrounding it, this configuration may simply mean that we are stuck in our particular interpretation of reality that is often influenced greatly by our ideology. In this case, we may be unable to perceive anything outside of this eternal loop, as a harmonious energy flow between Jupiter and Saturn may limit the possibility of outside challenges. Therefore, it is not uncommon for individuals with this configuration in their natal charts to get away with their misdeeds or find highly plausible arguments for justifying their unsettling beliefs or behavior. In its most ideal form, the harmonious energy flow between Saturn and Jupiter can represent an innate tendency to be in the right place at the right time, or enjoy synchronicity and serendipity. As the revered Alan Watts, who had this configuration in his natal chart, said, You are a function of what the whole universe is doing, in the same way that a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing. Jupiter plus Saturn sextile aspect. Exposure to philosophy, religion, foreign languages, or diverse cultures may have played an important role in our conscious experience of life. Our parents or siblings may have exposed us to exotic or foreign concepts relatively early in life through their passion, family background, or career. Alternatively, a parent or ancestor could be a Jupiterian figure, i.e., a teacher, clergyman, politician, cultural or academic figure, etc. In this case, our conscious perception of life may be colored by ideological input from this figure, or they could have played a significant role in our attitude toward vocational matters or achieving success in life. We may also find opportunities to bring insight into our conscious experience by analyzing them in the light of higher wisdom or spiritual guidelines. If Saturn and Jupiter are well integrated, we can enjoy sharp wit or outstanding eloquence in expressing ourselves. Writing or communicating will convey savoir-faire in this case, and we may be recognized for our style and timing. If Saturn and Jupiter are stressed in the chart, we may have received an early ideological message that could have tainted our entire view of reality. This may have affected our conscious experience of life, especially regarding the universal notions of right and wrong. In this case, only through a long and laborious analysis of our childhood circumstances may we free ourselves from such an ideological conditioning and start living a life of fresh choices based on new convictions. Jupiter aspects, Chiron. Chiron plus Jupiter, conjunction aspect. Chiron symbolizes our vulnerabilities, physical, psychological, spiritual, or intellectual sore points that stay with us throughout our lives. It also represents our natural awkwardness regarding a particular archetypal function. As such, a conjunction between Jupiter and Chiron may symbolize that our basic philosophy of life, our ideological attitude, or our ethical convictions are already merged with Chironic themes. Wounds and healing them, weirdness and living with its many implications, or being out of sync with the collective and surviving the resulting banishment or ridicule will be some possible topics in the life of an individual with this placement in the natal chart. Depending on the sign in which this configuration takes place, the expansive energy of Jupiter will be crystallized around the specific complex of Chiron. In fire signs, this conjunction may symbolize a fundamental belief that self-assertion, falling in love, or sexuality can hurt us. In air signs, we may believe that our capacity for thinking, communicating, or relating is limited or somehow challenged. In water signs, we may believe that the boundaries of our private life are fragile, or that we cannot protect ourselves or our loved ones from pain or suffering. And in earth signs, we may seek meaning in the process of becoming a recognized figure of some sort through fame or infamy. If Chiron and Jupiter are relatively well integrated, we may have access to instinctive knowledge or mystical wisdom. Archetypal energies may be readily intuited and integrated as part of our belief system or ideological approach to life. If this conjunction is under stress, we may feel lost in a vortex of meaninglessness, struggling to maintain a minimum level of trust in life by imagining a possible meaning or significance for it. The creative potential in this case is extraordinary. We may yield to the raw side of life by fully committing to its absurdity and allowing it to be seen in all its awkwardness, brokenness, or disintegration. Picasso's paintings are the most excellent example of this energy manifesting itself in an artistic form. Jupiter plus Chiron square aspect. We may find it difficult to bring our life philosophy into alignment with our psychological sore points or interactive healing capacity. One may be emotionally vulnerable to the idea of hurting others or getting hurt by others, as our ideological frame of reference resists an assignment of meaning to the process of wounding, healing, or suffering of any type. An individual with this placement in the natal chart may have registered suffering as an integral part of his or her understanding of life. This could have happened either directly through an ideological upbringing which highlights the collective fate of the human race as imbued with pain, or indirectly through a parent's involvement in a chironic theme such as a healing or caring profession, or a parent suffering from a physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental handicap, making the individual aware of the theme of suffering relatively early in life. In some cases, pain may be identified as an integral part of the process of emotional bonding and may affect our mode of relating to others. This possibility has been succinctly expressed by the French writer Marcel Proust, who had this configuration in his natal chart and described love as reciprocal torture. If the energies represented by this square are well integrated, we may become less afraid of hurting others or getting hurt by others as we become more mature. In this case, we may also develop a profound compassion for the inevitability of suffering. As Marcel Proust says elsewhere, we are healed from suffering only by experiencing it to the full. Jupiter plus Chiron, opposition aspect. We may periodically vacillate between the desire for expansion and the fear of experiencing or inflicting pain as a result of such expansion. Alternatively, our view of the world may have been formed by disowning a psychological sore point or an awkward archetypal function, depending on Chiron's sign and house placement. With the possibility of suffering constantly looming on the horizon of our existence, we may have felt too fragile to carry such an awareness. We may have disclaimed it and projected it onto a particular other, a person or a concept. As a consequence, we may experience either revulsion toward this other pole, the actual or abstract other that now carries our chironic burden, or unbridled tenderness in any encounter with it. It is also possible that we endlessly waver between revulsion and tenderness regarding the disowned chironic element which is now permeating the other through our subjective lens of ideology. With this configuration in the natal chart, we have to be vigilant regarding our sense of woundedness projected onto the outside world. This will only reappear in our lives in the form of a partner, a friend, a passion, or a prejudice for or against certain people or concepts. Identifying our sore points and learning how to feel awkward or out of place without hating or blaming ourselves will be the beginning of a long healing process in this case. Because of the interactive nature of Chiron in general, and the interactive nature of this aspect in particular, the other will play a crucial role in addressing the chironic wound. Therefore, we have to approach our relationships as unique opportunities that may open doors to self-discovery or psychological restoration, rather than mere pastimes or casual encounters. The potential for ideological healing through a significant relationship, especially with a mentor or teacher, remains high throughout the life of an individual with this configuration in his or her natal chart. Jupiter plus Chiron, quincunx aspect. With the Jupiterian function symbolically positioned in an unequal relationship with the archetype of healing, we may have ideologically concluded that healing is impossible to achieve or that a high price must be paid for it to occur. In either case, our ideology often carries a strongly chironic flavor in this case. An almost obsessive-compulsive attraction toward finding meaning in that which is out of place, awkward, or difficult to integrate may also exist, as well as an ideological fascination with death in its many forms if this configuration is further entangled with Neptune or Pluto. As we become more mature, we may be able to see the possibility of spiritual healing coming through certain ideological conventions. Alternatively, instead of feeling ideologically superior or inferior in relation to others, we may start coming to terms with the diversity of beliefs and letting go of the energetic imbalance we carry inside. This will eventually help shift our perspective from holding on to pain as a necessary ingredient of belief to focusing on belief as a means of healing pain. Jupiter plus Chiron, semi-sextile aspect. Our tendencies toward expansion may trigger our wounds and psychological sore points. We may find it difficult to bring together our awkward side and sophisticated side if these energies are under stress in the natal chart. If Jupiter and Chiron are well integrated, we may approach the healing process as an organic or holistic phenomenon rather than a purely spiritual procedure. This, in turn, will create an opportunity for the seemingly unrelated polarities of the psyche to form a more balanced energy field over time. If Chiron and Jupiter are not well integrated, however, this configuration may hint that we consider the sphere of wounding and healing as unrelated to the sphere of ideological development or completely separate from it. In this case, we may develop a high degree of sophistication in understanding the world, and yet remain unable to use that understanding to initiate healing processes regarding our wounds or the wounds of others around us. Jupiter plus Chiron trine aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, an ample ideological space exists for processing wounds or addressing the sore points we may carry inside. A facility for recovering from ideological or religious trauma may also be indicated here. If this configuration is well integrated, the wounds can be riveting, inspiring, and full of creative potential. We may be easily attracted to what is awkward or out of place. In addition, we may use our painful psychic content as material for artistic or imaginative expression. If Jupiter and Chiron are under stress, however, this configuration may symbolize that our sore points are naturally part of our outlook on life. Pain may be unconsciously revered as the highest form of ideological sophistication. Psychologically, we may be intrigued by the idea of standing outside of what is accepted, balanced, or beautiful. We might be able to express ourselves in an unusual way or exclude ourselves from society or our tribe. In either case, a harmonious energy flow between Chiron and Jupiter can symbolize a rare possibility for inviting our awkward side to dance with our sophisticated side, for bestowing upon the out of place its proper ideological place, and for perceiving our wounds as potential doors to higher levels of understanding. Jupiter plus Chiron sextile aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, we often encounter opportunities to address and heal our wounds through interaction with Chironic figures, healers, mentors, etc. In this case, the Chironic figures may facilitate our understanding of our place in the cosmos, our ideological conventions, or our philosophical approach to life. Alternatively, a sibling, relative, friend, or someone in the immediate environment could have had Chironic features, which could have affected our view of life, for better or worse. If Chiron and Jupiter are stressed, we may have been exposed to such Chironic figures, but developed a condescending sense of pity rather than genuine understanding or caring compassion. Alternatively, we may have felt uncomfortable or embarrassed to have a disabled brother or sister, to have been exposed to the miseries of our family members or friends, or to have been chosen as a healing or helping figure in our community despite our lack of qualification or psychological readiness. With Jupiter and Chiron aspecting each other in any form in the natal chart, the theme stays more or less the same: how the awkward, the ugly, the wounded, or the sheer helplessness of all creatures affects our ideological or philosophical approach to life, or defines our perception of the mechanisms operative in existence. Chiron and Jupiter are both teaching figures. One has the virtue of compassion, whereas the other is concerned with the right and wrong. One practices what he preaches, whereas the other may simply preach what is ideal. One is a bridge between the high and the low, whereas the other resides on the highest plane of existence. When these two energies come together, we are blessed with many divine ideas and earthly wishes to make this world a better place for all to live. Jupiter aspects. Uranus. Jupiter plus Uranus conjunction aspect. As mentioned earlier, Uranus can be evaluated as the signature of trauma in evolutionary astrology if it is under stress in the natal chart. In psychological astrology, if it is unintegrated, Uranus may symbolize cataclysmic events when it contacts other planets in the chart, either natally or through transit. Uranus often operates on a deeply unconscious level, as it symbolizes residual distress carried over in the mental body. The conscious mind often represses it. By understanding the particular symbolism of natal Uranus, keeping a dream journal, or through meditation, we can cultivate an awareness of how this energy works and channel it in a healthier fashion. The conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus may symbolize a higher possibility of accessing the repressed energies of Uranus through learning or practicing certain rituals. As the higher mind, Jupiter, is already in contact with part of the unconscious mind, Uranus, the psyche will be open to processing the trauma, i.e., there is a greater chance for the individual to allow the repressed content to leak into the sphere of the consciousness, for better or worse. If this conjunction is under stress, especially in aspect to the Moon or Mercury, the individual may have a difficult time sorting out the unconscious impulses surfacing in the form of inexplicable obsessions, phobias, self-sabotaging conduct, or irrational behavior. The unconscious content of the psyche, represented by an unintegrated Uranus, is often buried under layers of traumatic memories. The individual may believe that the reality is nothing more than that very personal and painful content. In this case, the ego may be threatened by a lack of distinction between what is objectively real and what is psychologically real. In extreme cases, this may manifest as psychosis, or what we commonly refer to as losing touch with reality. If, however, this conjunction is relatively well integrated, a unique opportunity will arise to examine our belief system in an objective and cool-headed manner. We may even make a career out of careful analysis of ideology, religion, or the processes involved in faith and doubt. As Paul Tillich, one of the most influential theologians of the past century, who had this placement in his natal chart, succinctly stated, "Doubt is not the opposite of faith, it is an element of faith." In this case, even though our basic philosophy or ideological outlook has suffered several shocks in life, we can still keep our faith and look for meaning in all of the unlikely and unimaginable places in our lives. Jupiter plus Uranus square aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, one's personal philosophy or ideological orientation may be at odds with what is collectively sanctioned or practiced. Alternatively, the individual may have formed a belief system based on certain parental or ancestral principles while in conflict with those very same principles. For example, a heterosexual woman raised in a patriarchal context who has this configuration in her natal chart may develop a degree of disdain for macho behavior and even identify herself as a feminist, yet lose respect for her significant other if he does not fulfill the traditional manly role of offering protection to her or covering her expenses. In this case, an early belief instilled in our psyche negates itself, yet remains fully operational until we become conscious of the self-conflicting ideological pattern involved and intend to address it in a constructive manner. Sometimes ideological conflicts are so deeply embedded in the psyche that it is almost impossible to address them directly. In other cases, the entire belief system may have been formed around a core trauma. A parental figure, for example, may have assumed the Iranian role of shaking up one's world and imparting the message that life is not predictable. He or she may have subsequently left the child or died unexpectedly. In this case, the individual may have experienced the trauma involved in the formation of a belief system as equal to the concept of belief itself. Therefore, believing in anything may prove difficult later in life. If the energies represented by this aspect are well integrated, as we become more mature, we will become more conscious of the possible self-conflicting messages we may carry, and we will be able to see why certain messages register more powerfully than others. Understanding why we believe in what we believe is the ultimate gift of this natal configuration. Jupiter plus Uranus, opposition aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, our belief system may have been formed around a core projection or exclusion. In some cases, our life philosophy may exclude all that is different, erratic, or indeterminate. For example, we may identify as pious believers and judge those who do not follow the same doctrine as unreliable. Or we may subscribe to an ideological system that functions based on the exclusion of a certain group, race, religion, or ethnicity. In other cases, we may identify with the Uranian side of the opposition and project the Jupiterian side onto others, i.e., seeing ourselves as the misunderstood genius and the rest of the world as the brainwashed sheep with an infantile need for a religion or ideological system to follow. In most cases, however, we tend to switch back and forth between these two poles, even if this alteration is not conscious or intentional. If this configuration is under stress and psychologically unintegrated, we may have a low threshold for Uranian uncertainty and unpredictability. In extreme cases, we may ideologically dissociate from whatever Uranus represents, such as unconventional behavior, traumatic memories, or an openness to change, in order to maintain sanity. As such, we may gradually freeze into an ideological state that we have inherited from our environment without questioning it, simply because probing may provoke distress. If this configuration is well integrated, however, examining and questioning lifelong beliefs and convictions comes naturally to us. Instead of disowning the discomfort involved in our past and projecting it onto the outside world, we can learn how to reclaim all parts of ourselves to expand our understanding of our mechanisms and the world around us. Jupiter plus Uranus quincunx aspect. A particular life philosophy or chosen ideology may have been formed as a reaction to trauma or due to an unconscious avoidance of distressing memories. Alternatively, our fundamental way of perceiving the world may have been misinterpreted or misjudged by collective forces. In some cases, this configuration in the natal chart symbolizes the possibility of a fundamental discord between our personal beliefs and the collective beliefs of our times. The resulting crisis may inevitably affect our lives in this case. The silent twins, June and Jennifer Gibbons, whose speech impediment and lack of communicative skills ostracized them and eventually led to their hospitalization, would be an apt example of how this energy may manifest in its unintegrated form. One specific way of interacting with the world, which is formed by one specific tribal, racial, or social background, may be dismissed or severely misunderstood by the collective ideology of one's time and place. As a result, one may suffer the consequence of being culturally or socially different or be banished and forgotten by the collective. If this energy is made conscious and accepted as we grow older, however, there will exist a higher chance for it to become a source of inspiration rather than discord. Interestingly enough, the French writer and philosopher Maurice Blanchot, who had this configuration in his natal chart, refused to be interviewed or photographed. He believed his words could be misrepresented if they were attributed to him rather than to his literary and philosophical works. He extensively wrote on the subjects of silence, writing, art, and death from a philosophical point of view, not only addressing the limits of our perception, but also highlighting such limits as conditions for creative endeavors. Every art draws its origin from an exceptional fault. Every work is the implementation of this original fault, from which come to us a new light and a risky conception of plenitude. Jupiter plus Uranus semi-sextile aspect. Our political or ethical views may be cut off from the collective trends of our time and place. Alternatively, our ideology or life philosophy may have been affected by a traumatic incident, for better or worse. If the energies symbolized by Jupiter and Uranus are well integrated, we may be able to develop an idealistic or humanitarian style of politics or ethics over time. Alternatively, maintaining a creative or uncommon vision may be a vital part of our mission in life. If Uranus and Jupiter are not well integrated, however, this configuration may hint that some traumatic memories may have been cut off from the sphere of ideological development. In this case, a significant part of unconscious life may remain inaccessible to conscious analysis and reveal itself through less desirable outlets. Maintaining a creative and introspective lifestyle, meditating and journaling, may encourage this energy to release itself in a constructive manner. Jupiter plus Uranus trine aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, we may display an ideological openness toward unconventional concepts. The belief system may welcome resistance to the status quo. We may find it relatively easy to change or revise our entire belief system when necessary. If this configuration is well integrated, a psychological tendency may exist regarding ideological risk-taking, including following one's definition of ethical or moral behavior and putting one's principle above what is labeled as correct by culture, religion, or society. If Jupiter and Uranus are not psychologically well integrated, however, we may passively get involved in the collective ideology or politics of our time or be swept away by a political or ideological system that operates on fixed collective principles and does not take into account particularities or exceptions. In most cases, however, the harmonious energy flow between Uranus and Jupiter symbolizes an opportunity to be an informed citizen and participate in our tribe or nation's destiny. It can also indicate enjoying a high degree of psychological ease regarding change and an ability to invite what is different into our ideological space to enrich our view of life. Jupiter plus Uranus sextile aspect. In order to grow philosophically, religiously, or politically, we often encounter opportunities to question, challenge, or change our beliefs. Alternatively, our parents, friends, or siblings may have displayed Uranian characteristics such as being connected to the collective trends, being traumatized or absent, or being highly inventive, unconventional, or progressive. In some cases, our conscious perception of life may have been affected by the ideological input coming from these figures, for better or worse. If the archetypal energies of Uranus and Jupiter are well integrated, we may be able to observe the process of formation of certain convictions in ourselves, and subsequently interrogate or inspect these convictions when necessary. If Uranus and Jupiter are not psychologically well integrated, however, we may have certain ideological blind spots, an awareness of which may take quite a long time, as these energies may not overtly pose a challenge to our psychological well-being, and yet may operate in the background in a subversive manner, destabilizing us regarding our perceptive or analytical capacities. Jupiter aspects, Neptune, Jupiter plus Neptune conjunction aspect. In psychological astrology, Neptune symbolizes our capacity to imagine, dream, and transcend. In its most elevated form, Neptune represents our link with God or the higher power. Neptune may also represent the pain of separation from the source and the desire to return to the source. It may stand for a profound degree of spiritual yearning and an impetus to lose oneself in order to allow something bigger and better than oneself to come through. Neptune largely operates unconsciously and may symbolize unresolved knots carried over in the spiritual body from past lives or early childhood, only to be partially revealed through hypnosis, regression work, or dream analysis. Understanding Neptune's particular symbolism may thus help us channel this archetype in a healthier fashion. The conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune may indicate that the curtain separating the collective mind from the individual mind is thin. As the individual's higher mind, Jupiter, is already in contact with the universal mind, Neptune, the psyche will be open to channeling ideas, visions, and perceptions in order to directly impart them to the individual's ideological depository. In this case, we are almost always in touch with this higher dimension of insight and can draw upon its many resources to enrich our experience of existence. As Emily Dickinson, the celebrated American poet who had this configuration in her natal chart, aptly stated, "The brain is wider than the sky." If this conjunction is under stress and psychologically unintegrated, we may have difficulty differentiating the imagination from what is real. Fantasy life may take disproportionate dimensions, and we may start living in a fantasy world more than dealing with the actual context of our lives. The unconscious content of the psyche, represented by an unintegrated Neptune, may at times spill over into the conscious realm and taint our ability to rationally reason or act in a sane manner. Edward Gein, the American murderer whose life inspired the horror movie The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, had this conjunction in the first house in Cancer in his natal chart, and apparently never learned how to channel this energy in a healthy fashion. After his mother died, he started killing various women to skin them, imagining that by wearing their skins he could literally crawl into the skin of her dead mother and become one with her. Of course, there are many other complex signatures in Gein's chart. We would also consider the possibility of genetically inherited conditions and environmental influences that cannot be seen in a natal chart. In this particular case, however, we can surmise how the all-encompassing Neptune archetype affected the individual's ideology to the point of deluding him into believing that he could reunite with his dead mother by killing others. If this configuration is well integrated, the ideological structure may gain a poetic dimension, as appreciation of beauty, nuance, sounds, and colors may come naturally to us. This, in turn, will open our minds to higher forms of understanding, a mode of perception that cannot be written or spoken, yet has an undeviating quality, inviting us to develop a taste for divine pleasures. As Emily Dickinson beautifully stated, "The soul should always stand ajar, ready to welcome the ecstatic experience." Jupiter plus Neptune square aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, our personal philosophy or ideological orientation may be open to a wide range of collective influences, for better or worse. Alternatively, we may have inherited a belief system that seems to promote the inadequacy of conventional morality and allow a large degree of flexibility in forming our own views. Yet those very same inherited beliefs may subtly invite us to disregard the question of morality altogether, or open ourselves to a way of being in which having a belief system is simply out of the question. As the American novelist Theodore Dreiser, who had this configuration in his natal chart, brilliantly stated, "Nothing is proved, all is permitted." This level of permissibility regarding Jupiterian issues such as ethical behavior, personal principles, or ideological orientation may not pose a problem in and of itself. However, it may indirectly affect our way of processing life experiences or responding to various situations requiring the application of moral or ideological criteria. Rather than adhering to fixed principles or implementing predetermined ideological rules out of context, the individual with this configuration in the natal chart has the potential to consider all of the circumstances involved in a situation to make more informed decisions. Negatively, this aspect may indicate suppression of personal ideology in the face of collective political or social forces, which can lead to resentment. In rare cases, if this energy is not psychologically integrated, the individual may seek some form of collective platform for launching his or her personal ideology, not seeing anything wrong with involving random bystanders in his or her schemes. Therefore, it is not surprising to occasionally see this configuration in the charts of terrorists, religious fanatics who have caused harm to others as a result of their beliefs, or those who have attempted to assassinate political or religious figures at one point. If the energies represented by this square are well integrated, however, we can perfectly discern the distinction between what is imaginary and what is real. This will enable us to use these two realms creatively. Individuals with this configuration in their natal charts are advised to practice working with the realm of the imaginary in a tangible form by writing, painting, sewing, making artifacts, etc., to channel the cerebral energies indicated in this configuration in a constructive manner. Another possibility is getting involved in politics, social work, or any other topic which is somehow related to the collective welfare and assuming a supportive role rather than suppressing one's own ideological need to interact with the collective. Quite a number of politicians and social reformers have this configuration in their natal chart as well. Jupiter plus Neptune opposition aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, our belief system may have been formed around a core projection or illusion. In some cases, our life philosophy may reflect an absolute dedication to a higher ideal, and in other cases, our philosophical or religious outlook may simply contain elements that cannot be rationally processed, i.e., we may have acquired our core beliefs through premonitions, signs, and omens, or a direct contact with the source through dreams or dreamlike states. If the energies symbolized by this opposition are well integrated, we will live a life guided by a healthy degree of intuition, an openness to messages coming from the higher realms, and a desire to transcend the boundaries of the mundane life through spiritual practices. Left unintegrated, however, Neptune in this configuration may hint at a wide range of escapist behavior, including the following: various types of addictions which are meant to soothe the soul, but capture and corrupt the soul; memory lapses, which are among the most common defense mechanisms designed by the psyche to protect us from having to consciously deal with distressing recollections; highly idealistic or irrational expectations which distract us from dealing with varying degrees of discomfort or pettiness present in our lives; denial and projection, which are supposed to navigate us away from the pain involved in real life or the miserable aspect of the human condition in general; and finally, falling into victim/savior dynamics, which will be a certain way to escape from taking full responsibility for our growth and change. As is the case with any opposition, the ability to hold and contain both sides of an equation within one's consciousness will give rise to an enormous amount of regenerative power, which can then be channeled through the arts or any other creative endeavor. In this case, the ability to simultaneously engage the faculty of reasoning and the faculty of intuition will be the ultimate key to working with the best of both energies represented in this opposition in the natal chart. From an evolutionary point of view, individuals with this placement in their natal charts should develop an appreciation for what is unspoken or unthinkable, for what is not to be put into words or done by hand and is only to be imagined. In this case, we have to understand that the highest form of contribution to the cosmos is the simple act of imagination, sitting quietly and imagining worlds that are better, richer, and in harmony with the flow of life for ourselves and for others. As such, the collective waters of Neptune will be properly channeled as the powerful, pure force, giving rise to many forms of experience yet to come, experiences that may never present themselves to the field of human perception if not already envisioned by an individual soul. Jupiter plus Neptune quincunx aspect. Our life philosophy or chosen ideology may have been formed as a reaction to either the conventional or the unconventional forms of knowledge. This may have excluded intuition and nonverbal communication, or relied too much on intuition and nonverbal communication. Alternatively, our fundamental way of being or perceiving the world may have been misunderstood or dismissed by collective forces. In some cases, this configuration of the natal chart symbolizes the possibility of a fundamental discord between one's mode of spirituality and the prevalent modes of spirituality practiced by the collective during one's lifetime. In other cases, the individual may simply have access to an immutable source of imagination that is not yet perceptible within the collective consciousness of one's time and place. If the energies present in this configuration are properly harnessed, we can create a brave new world in any field that interests us by applying our style of imagination or working toward our dreams. As Langston Hughes, the American poet who was one of the most influential participants in the Harlem Renaissance and had this configuration in his chart, famously stated, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." Jupiter plus Neptune semi-sextile aspect. Our psychological link to the cosmos may be numbed by our ideological tendencies or belief system. Alternatively, our philosophy may have been affected by loss, disappointment, or disillusionment at one point in life. In this case, if the energies symbolized by Jupiter and Neptune are well integrated, we may be able to find meaning in such unsettling experiences or even find a creative outlet for them. Otherwise, if Neptune and Jupiter are not well integrated, we may find it difficult to cope with our spiritual imperfections. We may experience a high degree of tension between what our hearts want to follow and what our minds believe. Allowing enough time and space for silence and letting spiritual or ideological processes unravel naturally rather than forcing them to follow a certain course can help us work through such dilemmas. Jupiter plus Neptune trine aspect. This configuration in the natal chart symbolizes psychological cooperation between the distinct spheres of ideology and spirituality. Statements such as "beauty is my religion" or "what you seek is seeking you" perfectly reflect how these two archetypes may interact through this aspect. If this configuration is well integrated, the gap between what the heart believes and what the mind sanctions will be minimal. In this case, we will be usually more prone to what is normally categorized as mystical experiences, or may develop a pantheistic view of existence, which would allow us to understand ourselves not as a separate unit randomly floating around, but as a meaningful element with a divine purpose, fully participating in the process of creation. If Jupiter and Neptune are not psychologically well integrated, however, we may never learn to distinguish between intuitive perception and perception coming from reliance on evidence or logical processes. In this case, we may display a degree of naivete regarding belief systems or spiritual practices, or we may simply adhere to a doctrine that is not intellectually rigorous enough to be objectively examined. In either case, the harmonious energy flow between Neptune and Jupiter symbolizes an opportunity to be in touch with the heart of the cosmos and yearn for what is truly eternal and beautiful. As the 13th century Persian mystic and poet Rumi, who had this configuration in his natal chart, exquisitely expressed, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." Jupiter plus Neptune sextile aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, we often encounter opportunities to tap into the collective unconscious and get inspired by what is beyond the rational mindset. Alternatively, our parents, friends, or siblings may have displayed Neptunian characteristics such as being artistic, spiritual, addicts, or victims. In some cases, our conscious perception of life may have been affected by ideological input from these figures, for better or worse. If the archetypal energies of Neptune and Jupiter are well integrated, we may be able to merge the intuitive messages coming from the collective with the logical processes of the mind to create something original that benefits all. If Neptune and Jupiter are not psychologically well integrated, however, we may let delusions reign over logic, get involved in collective affairs that will ultimately prove harmful, or simply lose sight of the ideological context of our time and place in favor of pursuing ideas that cannot bear fruit in reality. Jupiter Aspects, Pluto, Jupiter plus Pluto conjunction aspect. According to the evolutionary astrologer Jeffrey Wolf Green, Pluto symbolizes the soul. A chart can be analyzed simply by looking at Pluto's condition, Pluto's polarity point, the sign opposing Pluto's sign, and Pluto's dispositor, the planet ruling the sign in which Pluto is located. This information is then contextualized based on the position of the south node and the north node of the moon to offer clues regarding possible past life experiences and karmic lessons repeated in prior life cycles. In its most basic sense, Pluto represents instinctual habits that influence our conscious behavior. These may include karmic tendencies or ancestral themes repeated in the lives of various family members of the same bloodline. In either case, what this planet symbolizes is largely unconscious. It can be understood by exploring what is instinctual, irrational, or nonverbal in us. The conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto may indicate that a significant part of our belief structure has been inherited from our ancestors or influenced by our karmic patterns rather than consciously chosen or formed. Furthermore, as the individual's higher mind, Jupiter, is in contact with what is instinctual and profound, Pluto, the psyche may register the concept of belief as related to survival. If this conjunction is under stress and psychologically unintegrated, we may take our beliefs too seriously, unable to cope with life without following some ideology or religious guidelines. Alternatively, we may feel the urge to fight for what we believe in. We may also try to convince others of the benefits of our spiritual, religious, or cultural practices. Losing objectivity regarding our convictions is another possibility here. In this case, choosing to interact with friends or family members who can offer an honest and objective view of our opinions can be helpful. If this configuration is well integrated, however, the ideological structure is usually vigorous and utilized to get in touch with the heart and soul of life. We will not be afraid of passionately following our unique convictions or actively harboring a vision of change. This may indeed transform the lives of those who have come into contact with us, intellectually or ideologically. Jupiter plus Pluto square aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, our personal philosophy or ideological orientation may have been challenged by our karmic habits or ancestral patterns. Alternatively, we may have inherited a belief system that is at odds with our instinctual response to life. Our deep-rooted tendencies may be perceived as incompatible with our spiritual, religious, or intellectual ambitions. At its finest, the energy exchange between Pluto and Jupiter can invoke an ideological consideration of what is inexplicable, irrational, or impulsive. At its worst, it can indicate suppression of personal ideology because of certain inherited behavior patterns or psychosexual predispositions. In some cases, our ideology may act as a security blanket, helping us grasp the inherent insecurity of existence. In other cases, relying on a belief system may provide the necessary means for dealing with what has been prematurely arrested or overdeveloped in our psyche. Jupiter plus Pluto opposition aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, our belief system may have been formed by expelling or excluding the instinctual side of life. In some cases, our philosophy may have been affected by a reluctance to recognize the irrational or nonverbal impulses in our own psyche, and therefore we may see these very rejected themes operative in others. If the energies symbolized by this opposition are well integrated, our view of life will include a recognition of the psychological shadow and a healthy respect for what cannot be grasped or explained by the belief system of our choice. Left unintegrated, however, Pluto in this configuration may hint at the presence of an intellectual, religious, or spiritual shadow, affecting our ideology or opinions for better or worse. In this case, a potent part of the psyche may operate outside of our intellectual grasp and eventually be brought to consciousness through impulsive encounters with certain people, places, or incidents. Jupiter plus Pluto quincunx aspect. Our particular life philosophy or chosen ideology may have been formed as a reaction to our instincts or psychological impulses. Alternatively, our fundamental way of being may have been dismissed or utterly devalued by what was inherited from the past, including karmic ties or ancestral influences. In some cases, this natal configuration symbolizes the possibility of a fundamental discord between our conscious beliefs and the accumulated karmic forces operative in our psyche. In other cases, our sexual encounters with significant others or certain epiphanies during times of crisis, such as a near-death experience, may influence our general ideology or outlook on life. Jupiter plus Pluto semi-sextile aspect. Our instinctual or psychosexual patterns may be hidden from our ideological tendencies or belief systems. Alternatively, our personal philosophy may have been affected by a crisis. In this case, if the energy symbolized by Jupiter and Pluto are well integrated, we may find a higher meaning in crisis, heartache, or pain. Otherwise, if Pluto and Jupiter are not well integrated, we may find it difficult to come to terms with our base needs, taboo desires, or primitive urges. Allowing enough time and space for processing pain and coming to terms with the primal aspects of our human experience can help us work with the polarized energies symbolized by Pluto and Jupiter in this configuration. Jupiter plus Pluto trine aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, there is usually psychological cooperation between the distinct spheres of ideology and instinct. If this configuration is well integrated, the gap between the instinctual side of life and that which the conscious mind sanctions as legitimate will be minimal. In this case, the individual will often be more comfortable with aspects of her own psyche that may not be as pleasant or pretty to deal with. If Jupiter and Pluto are not psychologically well integrated, however, we may never learn to separate what is purely instinctual from what is truly inspirational. In this case, instincts can easily influence our moral attitudes or ideological tendencies. In either case, the harmonious flow between Pluto and Jupiter symbolizes an opportunity to bring the higher and lower aspects of our psyche together and witness a creative marriage within ourselves. Jupiter plus Pluto sextile aspect. With this configuration in the natal chart, we often encounter opportunities to learn about our karmic patterns or habitual propensities through exposure to crisis or pain. Alternatively, our parents, friends, or siblings may have displayed plutonic characteristics, such as being in crisis or displaying addictive or vindictive behavior. In some cases, our conscious perception of life may have been affected by the loss of a friend or family member. If the archetypal energies of Pluto and Jupiter are well integrated, we may truly learn from our pain or lower vibrations, taboo desires, or impulsive patterns. If Pluto and Jupiter are not psychologically well integrated, however, we may let pain take over logic, or feel utterly overwhelmed by our base instincts or karmic impulses. Honest and open-minded acceptance of all aspects of oneself, the good, the bad, and the ugly, may be the only way out of this predicament. About the author. This ebook is an edited collection of blog posts published on astrohealer.com by Tina Rahimi. Tina holds a PhD in philosophy, art, and critical thought from the European Graduate School, EGS. She has been a professional astrologer, teacher, and coach since 2010. You can reach her at astrohealerinfo@gmail.com. This audiobook version of Tina Rahimi's ebook Jupiter was created as a gift for Tina at the end of August, beginning September of 2023 by Kacee Leigh Connolly of Astrologically Sound. You can reach Kacee, myself, at astrologicallysound.com.